Sarah Boone was able to drag her case out for almost 5 years long until she finally met her fate, which ended up being a guilty verdict. However, during her trial that finally came about, she took the stand, and we're going to review some of her testimony through the lens of what we know now in today's video. Hello Sofa Squad and welcome back to the sofa. My name's Paul and as you see the sofa is gone. I am currently traveling right now, visiting family. They're off working today, and so I wanted to take the time to go back over Sarah Boone's testimony in the Sarah Boone and Jorge Torres trial. Now what we'll do is we'll do a quick summary of what the case was about, and then I've pulled some clips from her time on the stand to go over and look at through the lens of like what we know now. We know now what the jury decided, that was a guilty verdict, and kind of like just all the information that we learned through the trial. So that's how the video will go. Now, for those who are new to the case, Sarah Boone was in a relationship with a man by the name of Jorge Torres. Now, they had a very tumultuous relationship. Nobody's denying this. The state doesn't deny this. There was a lot of alcohol involved, a lot of back and forth. It was a very toxic relationship. So one morning, Sarah would claim she gets up, she finds George, he is in a suitcase, and basically she remembers, oh my gosh, you know, we had this evening or whatever and we were joking and laughing, it was a good day, and he had gotten in the suitcase, they were playing hide and seek, she zipped him up, she left room for him to get out, and she went upstairs and fell asleep. It was not intentional. She gets up in the morning, she finds that he's suffocated. Now Sarah would be brought in for an interrogation that went very viral, and during the interrogation she would tell the police officers, you know, look at my phone, you'll see evidence on there of, you know, the situation between George and I. Little did Sarah know that she had forgotten she recorded herself berating George while he was in the suitcase, begging for her to let him out because he could not breathe. Now, of course, when the cops saw this, they planned on arresting her, which they did, and she would ultimately be charged with the death of George. Now, Sarah would then go through about 9 lawyers. She went through them like tissue, to be honest, and she drugged this legal process out year after year after year, claiming that, you know, she was not, and this was not intentional, it was not her fault that George died. So at the very last minute, after the judge had said, you know what, you've exhausted your resources with appointed attorneys, you're gonna have to go pro se and represent yourself. So then at the last minute, an attorney, Mr. Owen, stepped in, said, I will represent you, Sarah. He came in maybe like 30 days before the trial. He represented her, and they went with a defense of battered spouse syndrome. Sarah would ultimately say that she, you know, experienced this and that she was afraid for her life, that she was afraid when George was in that suitcase, even though things had gone good that day. Things took a turn when she put him in the suitcase. He got angry, and if he got out, he was going to end her, as she said. Now, the jury would see through this, and they would ultimately come back with a guilty verdict. Now, at the last minute as well, before the trial went on, the state in open court offered her a reduced charge to manslaughter and offered her 15 years. She turned it down. She was very confident she would beat this. Well, it didn't work in her favor. Okay. So we have yet to see sentencing, and I'm recording this like the day after the verdict, so we have not seen her get sentenced yet. What I want to do is I had gone through and pulled out a bunch of clips from her testimony on the stand. Just like I said in the beginning of the video, we're going to go through those now, look at them, and just kind of make commentary along the way of what we know now. So let's go ahead and get that first clip up.
All right. And how long did y'all date before you married?
A good handful of years. I helped my family with paying mortgage and bills for the house since my father had passed away and my grandfather. So
you worked outside the home?
I did.
Okay. Can you tell the jury when you said you and Brian Boone dated for a while? Do you remember when y'all married?
I do.
Could you tell the jury when y'all were married?
The year?
Yeah. Do you remember the date?
It happened to be, yes, that after my mother passed away, that he had waited to ask me to marry him because he knew it would be,
Not responsive.
Sustained. Just answer the question if you can, Miss Boone. Are you a little bit nervous?
a little bit.
Okay. Well, just tell the jury if you remember the date that you and Brian Boone married.
August 21st, 2004.
Okay.
Okay, now what we're watching here is the very beginning. This is her attorney, Mr. Owens, questioning her. He is questioning her about her ex-husband, Brian Boone, and her relationship. Now, one of the tactics that Sarah will use in the stand, well, there's a couple of things, is first of all is her demeanor, her voice, her tone of voice. Hi, yes, and she's very meek. Now, we've seen tons of videos at this point during the trial of her not being that way. Now, you could argue that the drinking Sarah is a very angry person, but I would also argue that even sober Sarah is usually probably pretty angry, but she knows when to put this personality that you're seeing on, right? Now, George's family would also speak out and say, yeah, the Sarah that we're seeing, that's not Sarah that we're seeing, right? Now, also notice that we see here when she is talking and sliding stuff in, I paid for my family, I did this, after my father passed. We know that her, she basically has no family at this point. One of Sarah's narratives in life, as well as in the stand that we've seen, is to take the role of the victim in any scenario that she can, and she'll try and slide those type comments into every aspect of her testimony. Let's go on to the next clip.
Okay. So you and Brian were married, and y'all lived in Orange County. How long were y'all married?
For 13 years.
All right, and y'all divorced?
Yes.
Can you imagine 13 years with that? Now, Brian would testify and state that, she was the aggressor in the relationship, and I can 100% see that. Now, they would have a son. His name's Lucas. He's 14 years old at this time now. He was like, what was it, like 9 or 10 or something like that at the time of the crime, the crime with George. Imagine the life that she had probably put Lucas through. We've also learned on the stand, and we'll hear in her testimony as well, Brian would have to call her to check in and make sure she was even going to pick Lucas up from school. Now she'll have excuses for this, and we'll get to it, but nonetheless, it was a rough life. At the center of her life was, in my personal opinion, a pretty severe alcoholic issue that seemed to be the driving force in a lot of her behaviors and emotions.
At some time after you and Brian split up, did you meet Jorge Torres?
Yes.
All right, could you tell the jury how you met Jorge Torres?
I met George when I decided to buck up, I guess, and was tired of trying to patch things up with my ex-husband. And I decided to go one day for a walk across the street and go have a beer by myself and sit and people watch just to get out of my house and a change of scenery.
All right, now is this your apartment?
No, this is the marital home.
Okay.
The marital home. Can't roll my damn eyes hard enough. Now, you heard her here, where'd you meet George? At a bar across the street. That's a simple answer. Where'd you meet him? At a bar across the street from where Brian and I resided. There's that. She's going to, of course, extend this out. She wants to get as much information as possible. Now, it's understandable anybody taking the stand would want to slide some information in there. I get that, right? But a tactic oftentimes by people like Sarah and, just people with her personality is there's a reason why they're doing that. It's not just some, naive, like, oh, I'm just kind of telling my story. There's a reason she's doing this. It's to gain sympathy, things of this nature. And again, oh, well, I bucked it up and went over. I was tired of trying to patch things up. Her husband was probably, meaning Brian, was probably incredibly over her. As we've learned more and more, he was still paying for most of her stuff, right? As well as, probably supporting George and inadvertently during this. So she had probably worn her welcome out.
All right, how did you and George get along when y'all first met?
Very well. It was strange how quickly we hit things off and had so much in common, and I never thought that he would be interested in someone like me, and I just couldn't believe that he was actually interested in me and said a lot of nice things, and 1 hour ended up being 4 hours from when we had first met, and then we would always have something to talk about.
Why couldn't you believe that he would be interested in you?
He was very handsome. He was very funny. He was smart, and I would show up in workout clothes and disheveled hair, and I guess I kind of felt broken from being in the process of the divorce that he knew about. But then one of the things that we could relate also was the fact that he was here in Florida because he had just been divorced from his second wife. So that was another topic that he and I could compare notes on.
Now, this part right here where she's talking about that, and she says, I couldn't believe he would want to go out with me, and I was disheveled, and this and that. You again, listen to her tone of voice and listen to what she's saying, and then listen to the video evidence that she recorded herself and the way she would talk to him, the way she would berate him, the things that she said. Now, I completely understand that there's a difference in a relationship from when you first meet somebody versus a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. The natural ebbs and flows of a relationship, and typically that first zone, however long that, that fluffy cloud 9 zone lasts in a relationship is different for everybody, right? So I can completely respect that can be night and day from where the cookie crumbles, basically. So, but again, the way she presents this to the jury, oh, we always had stuff to talk about. Oh, we did this. Oh, we did that. Also makes me think that she was probably a very good love bomber and probably, obviously, a very good manipulator. I mean, we've heard from his family that said that, she's an excellent manipulator and conniving and this and that. Oftentimes what we see with people like Sarah when they try and sequester somebody and isolate them away, and the way she kind of treated him like a child and a pet, is this is part of the process in the beginning, is they're reflecting back to that person, whatever they need to see, right? And as we'll learn, where they seem to be almost okay, well, it's time to get a place to live, but I couldn't afford it on my own, so George was going to do this. There was a dependency mutually there that probably was also a driving force in the coming together and then staying together on some level until it was just, probably too much.
In the almost year, about 10 months of separation from Brian, my ex-husband, that is the time when I met George. And my ex-husband was trying to buy me out or force me out of our marital home, and I needed to find somewhere to live. And
so did you and George agree to rent the apartment?
Yes, I needed extra income. We could not afford it, just on my own.
You were receiving some income from the marriage settlement, were you not?
Yes.
So you did have consistent monthly income coming in from the marriage settlement?
For the most part, yes.
But you needed more to live.
Yes, to pay the bills and for rent.
Okay, so you hear this. Now, one thing to notice too is towards the end of the question where she's like, yes, to pay the bills and this, you can see how easily annoyed Sarah gets with people, but she's keeping the mask on. Obviously, she's in front of a jury, so she's going to keep that mask on. You can see it come through a little bit with her attorney from time to time, where it's almost like, don't question me. I told you what I was going to say, kind of an attitude from her. Now, also, this is just what I was talking about. First of all, I think she's getting $1,000 a month for the marriage. Sarah seemed to live this life of I'm bringing this to the table. George is going to bring this to the table, but I'm sure she berated him and it was never good enough and this, that, and the other. She kind of manipulated these people around her to pay her way. I don't think it was even an option to her to think about going and working at this stage in her life, right? I don't think that was even a consideration. It was, what can everybody do for me? And I think mostly her contribution was getting up and getting crocked, and that's just kind of what she did. That was the vibe. Maybe going to pick her son up and maybe doing that. I can't imagine what life was like at that place with a child coming around at all. I think it would be incredibly bad for a child to be around. But also notice the level of trying to slide in that I'm a victim. I was being forced out of the marital home. We've seen her behavior. Of course he's going to want to get her out of there, if not for his own sanity, for their child's.
So did you and George have some agreement?
We did.
All right, what was the agreement?
The agreement was that if I decided for he and I to live with one another, because it would be under my name, that he would help with the monthly bills and on a regular basis, where it wouldn't be something that I would have to argue with him about. It would just be an automatic. Make sure that everything's paid first, and then from there, hopefully have some fun with it.
Okay,
a couple of things to notice in this. First of all, her thinking, if I decided we would live together, and then the second part, well, it was an agreement that we would live together and he would pay, some form of the monthly bill without me having to argue about it. These are odd things to say. Okay. If you're fighting for your life on the stand, you're going to want, even if you were guilty, right? Even if like you're Sarah, a typical thing to do in this would be to paint the victim in the best light. So you wouldn't want to say something like, to insinuate, I had to argue to get money out of him. Okay. Now, the control issue comes through also in that if I decided we were going to live together, well, what about if we decided? She can't help herself. She's got to let that come out. She just can't help but to let everybody know I was in control. This is my ship that I'm driving. And typically my experience with people of whatever kind of personality stuff she's got going on, that's how they are. That overrides common sense. If somebody normal, again, I hate using normal, but that doesn't think like this was on the stand, they would go out of their way to be like, oh, you know what? We were going to decide to move in together. It was going to be this happy thing. He was going to contribute by paying like the grocery bill, the light bill, this. I was going to do this. And if we had money extra, we could go have fun with it. But that dark side of her has to come through and show itself because it's completely normal to her.
So y'all would have gotten up that morning, February 23rd of 2020.
Yes.
All right. Tell the jury what happened when y'all got up.
He was already downstairs, and I went downstairs, and he wanted to start the day off by drinking because it was a day off from his job. And I talked him into cleaning and tidying up the house for a sense of accomplishment. So that is what we did for however long that it took. So we did tidy up the house and got everything in order, and it was kind of a reward, I guess, to be able to sit and enjoy ourselves and sit on the back porch.
Now, again, you have to look at these statements that she's making this testimony in two lights. Number one, you're taking her at face value. Number two, she's lying about everything. Or number three, the truth is somewhere in the middle, and it's probably the latter. The truth is somewhere in the middle. Now, like the state said, there's definitely things both ways in this relationship. No one's denying that. Now, for the most part, nobody was there, right? We can't tell who instigated the drinking and who didn't. You can start piecing the puzzle together by looking at past behaviors that she herself has recorded, right? So this whole thing, well, it was his day off and he wanted to start the day off by drinking. Hey, maybe that's the vibe for some people. Great, fine, dandy. But Sarah, you see this bizarre level of control and the way she treats him like a child, and where she has to pivot herself constantly as being the responsible one. I told him that we were going to clean and tidy up the house, for a sense of accomplishment. And, so we did that, and I guess it was like a reward to sit and enjoy ourselves. And again, she makes everything sound as good as possible. So what she's saying is they woke up, they cleaned the house, and as a reward for doing that, they were going to get blitzed on wine on the back porch. We don't know how long it took to clean the house. 15 minutes. Okay, well, we did something. Again, they were both in the throes, it sounds like to me at least, of a major alcoholism. You get up, you put things together, and then, okay, now we get to get drunk. That's just not typically how things go, but it is what it is. Again, the way she speaks in these, the way she tries to be very controlled with her tone of voice and how she's talking, absolutely sends me over the edge because it seems so contrived, especially once we've seen the videos of her and how evil she sounds in them, berating George and whatnot. And this right here, I'm like, oh, she did not talk like this. If she woke up from what we've seen and he was like, hey, let's start drinking, it's whatever in the morning, I've got a bottle of wine, she would absolutely berate him. And I think that's how the days were. It just started off like that. She was an angry drunk, and she probably was an angry, bitter human being.
What was the arrangement you had in terms of the next day would have been your day to pick up your son from school?
Yes.
What time would you pick Lucas up from school the next day?
I believe his school ended at 3 o'clock.
I believe his school ended at 3 o'clock. Now, again, it might be in the next clip, but the ex-husband, Brian, would say, I had to call to make sure she was going to show up because sometimes she just wouldn't show up. So I had to make sure she was going to, that she got up on time. One thing to keep in mind as we listen to her testimony is pretend that none of this happened, like the death of George and whatnot. Remember, So she's saying, okay, well, basically, because the sun was coming the next day, this is our time to party. If you listen to her story, if it's true, it's like, so y'all were going to get this bomb blasted and then pass out at some point and get up and be in an okay mood to have your child come visit for the weekend? Because the level of drinking that they did is so over the top to then be like, yeah, we're not going to, we have to be accountable tomorrow. But again, it sounds like Sarah was very used to this level of drinking, so there is a little bit of a tolerance situation going on there. But nonetheless, she'll also use her son as a mechanism to invoke sorrow, to invoke, whatever, almost like a shield she'll use him as. Let's keep going.
It was just kind of, we've got the day to ourselves. Let's just kind of relax and go with the flow.
Did y'all make a decision that y'all were going to start drinking?
Yes, we had a half of a bottle that was already in the refrigerator, and I did not want to go out afterwards. I, again, had Lucas coming the next day, so we went over to Publix to purchase another bottle of wine so we could not have to go out later on that evening.
Okay, so now on this part right here, they had half a bottle of wine, which she'll downplay and say it was a little bit less than when he presents a bottle of wine later. I didn't want to go back out again, so we went ahead over and got a bottle of wine. Now remember, they're talking about the jugs of wine, those big old bottles. So like one thing is really the equivalent of two. And we'll also hear here in a minute how George goes back out and gets more. I had Lucas come in the next day, so we wanted to do this. And again, to each their own, however somebody wants to live their life, fine, dandy, cool. Yeah, but in this scenario, for someone who's trying to play off like things were okay, that was fine, things might go in a certain direction, to the naked eye, to the naked ear listening to this, you can see, and then the evidence that comes through of her behavior, you're just like, this is someone who gets incredibly violent when they're drunk. And getting drunk seems to be a daily occurrence, and I'm talking drunk. Even if your tolerance is like big, to be able to crack open a couple of these bottles during the week and throw these back during the daytime is next level, right? Especially for someone talking about we're looking for jobs, or she was, I think he had a little part-time job, this, that, and the other. It's like, okay, but yet you're gonna sit here and get absolutely schnockered on a weekday. I don't care if it's Thursday, I don't care if it's Friday, right? It is what it is. To be at this stage, you've got kids staying with you, you coming and going, you're looking for a job, you're doing this. Like, to me, there's not room for this behavior, especially in the context of trying to paint it like, no, we were fine. Like, this was just a fluke thing. We had this great day. We were having fun. It's him that gets out of control. None of the video evidence suggested that. And per her own testimony, she's showing the fuel for that fire and how the match was put to the kindling. We
just had drinks and we're just really enjoying each other's company and talking about, things upcoming. We both were looking for a job and just kind of, I guess, encouraging and supporting and planning. And
well, now you said he had a job. Was he looking for a job, a second job?
No, the job that he had was very unstable, and at that...
So he was looking for something new?
Yes, at that time, yes. Okay.
Again, somewhere in the middle is the truth. We were having a good time. We were talking about things coming up. I was looking for a job, or we were looking for a job, whatever she said. We were being supportive, this and that. That probably translates to her sitting there and berating him. The drunker she got, the more she antagonized him. Huge thing that she seems to do is antagonize him. She was probably sitting there like, you need to get a better job. I'm over here work. She was probably very content with Brian's little $1,000 a month. And it was probably like a daily drunk thing to be like, I'm gonna look for a job. And then she would probably somehow find a way that George throttled that for her, because really what it sounds like is that George was her job. The behavior that she describes and how much energy she was allegedly putting into him, I'm just like, this is crazy. This is a grown man, right? None of it makes sense. And again, because I think she's lying about most of it. I do not think that this is how this went at all. I think she probably sat there, kicked back in the chair, berating and cursing at him and calling him whatever, and then would turn the phone on at a certain point when she got drunk enough and start recording and documenting evidence.
And so during that 2 or 3 hours, would it be fair to say that y'all drank the bottle?
Yes.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that y'all were feeling the effects of the alcohol?
Yes,
Okay. At some point, who made the decision to come in?
I did.
Okay. Why did you want to come in?
I felt that George needed a change of scenery.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Do I even need to say it? Literally, y'all are thinking what I'm thinking probably, right? Do I even need to say it? Okay. I cannot wait for the jury to speak out on it. If they do, it's their choice, obviously. That last part right there, at some point you made a decision to come in. Yes. Who made that? I did. Why? I felt like George needed a change of scenery. She needed a change of scenery. Again, reverse everything. Reverse everything. Someone like her, and again, it's hard to wrap your brains around, at least for me, right? I have a hard time wrapping my brain around it because I think we always want to categorize and make sense of things and sort things like as humans. Someone like this where I'm like, Paul, she probably believes that because in that moment where she's like, George needs a change of scenery, she was probably berating him. She had gotten drunk enough. She was starting to be argumentative. She was berating him. He was probably pushing back a little bit. Like, I thought we were having fun. Like, why are we here? How did we get here? Right? So there was probably that going on, and she was like, well, we need to change this, we need to do this. And that's probably the game that they had to play, was like this pandering thing. Now we can kind of put two and two together because again, I don't want to sit here and make it out like, and I'm not trying to victim blame George, because I also am aware that the state even says, look, we get that some of this went both ways, I'm sorry. We get that. We heard, his ex-wife or whoever spoke and was like, the only thing I can say about him is he was a ladies' man. We saw some evidence of her talking about he was looking at this, looking at that, whatever, right? So saying that, I'm not trying to sit here and discount that there might have been some behaviors that were presented at times that would make any person in that relationship question the person, right? So pretend it was like a normal relationship, like that you don't have this kind of dynamic going on, but behavior A would elicit like, yeah, any girlfriend's probably going to question this, right? There's a level of normalcy with that. However, in this particular situation, there's not. And so even on a normal thing of like, well, this might have bothered somebody, I think Sarah would take it to a 20th degree. And before you get up to here to a legitimate thing of, okay, I caught my man talking to somebody, that's legitimate, you should be bothered by that. She was way over here by, well, he didn't answer me the way that I asked to. And I'm just as bothered by that as I am finding out hard proof that my man cheated on me. You see where I'm going with that? So while I think there probably was some stuff that went back and forth between them that could have been legitimate, before you ever got there, she was ticked off, and we've seen video evidence of it, right? He didn't say the word right. Say it over again. Say it over again. Why are you sleeping outside my door? Bizarre stuff that you're just like, huh? Why are we getting so turned up over this behavior when this behavior over here might be warranted to get upset over, and how you react to it is how you react to it? So the way she spins this stuff, again, looking at it now, I just really look at it like she's telling on herself. At this point, she was crocked. He was doing something that she didn't like. She needed to change the scenery. She decided they would come in. He has to play along with it.
Yes. I believe it was after it was right before I believe that we had gone inside. Because he called his daughters. I was trying to encourage him to call his family.
Okay, now where are his daughters?
His two daughters are located in Pennsylvania.
And what are their names?
Anna and Destiny.
And how old are they?
I believe that Anna is in her 30s and Destiny may be in her early 20s.
Now this part here, we've already heard evidence that he didn't like. It wasn't a good thing for him to be talking to the daughters and family, whatever, when he was drunk. So why is she encouraging him to do this? These are the little nuggets that have come out, full circle, where a person like the jury, for example, listening to this would be like, why would you make your man call his kids drunk? Why would you do that? Like, it doesn't even make sense, right? Even if there wasn't drama with it, why would you make someone do that? Like, you know what I mean? And even on this level of things, you can tell like there was probably some drinking issues. There was, some tumultuous stuff. So again, why do that? To me, it was a way for her to isolate him. It could be a couple of things like, well, I'm probably a couple of things were going on. And number one, it was like to start drama. Of course, like I think that was like her MO. She just liked creating drama. But number two is also like, well, if I do this, I'm going to show them how he really is. Kind of a thing. Something of that flavor, right? But I think at her core was this level of control and this level of like, she's bored. She's not doing anything. She's not working. She's sitting around drinking, right? This was like her work. He was her job in her world.
And is that common for y'all to use that, for y'all to share that phone?
It was, because George said that he didn't have a phone, so it would either be lost or given to him by his mother. So I didn't know he had a cell phone, so we would use my phone.
So it was primarily your phone?
Yes.
Okay. And you took a lot of photographs that were on that phone?
Yes.
Videotapes?
Yes.
Text messages?
Yes.
Phone call?
Yes, he and I both on the phone calls.
So he would use it as well?
Yes.
The thing with the phone doesn't make sense to me the way she explains it. It would either be lost or his mom would give him the phone. And so I guess my thing is this, I'm like, in this amount of time, and it could have been a financial thing, I mean, who knows, why not get another one? Or maybe she's trying to say, well, he would get when he would lose it. Why wouldn't he ever have a phone? If you think about the level of the kind of phones you can get, like almost like burner phones, if you will, right? With like certain limited plans and whatnot. Now that we know what we know, it doesn't seem weird because it seems on brand for her. But in a normal where the power control is not an issue in a relationship, why not just get the other person a cell phone for safety reasons alone? You know what I mean? Like, this is a grown man, kids in different states, going to work. What would he do? It doesn't make sense. Now, we either will get to the next clip or I'll just go ahead and discuss it where, he would have to basically hold the phone up to get her facial recognition to unlock it. I mean, she had it locked down to that degree. So she's able to monitor. Now, we already know she's not good at monitoring the phone because had she been good at it, she would have caught that she recorded her crime before going to do the police interrogation, right? So she wasn't too swift in that department. She probably was drunk most of the time and didn't think about it and forgot, but you would think that she would then say, I have to always go through my phone for as much as she recorded him and whatnot. That part's very weird. But again, the jury probably saw this as another level of like, what is this bizarre control she has over this man?
So just to get an idea, about this time is when he went to get the second bottle, or did y'all stay inside for a while before he left?
No, from what I recall, it was, I thought the day was over and it was going to be get ready for the evening, for the day. What do you want for dinner? Do you have an extra load of laundry that you need to throw in? Kind of thing. And that was my understanding. And
this was about 5-ish or something?
I don't remember the time.
Okay. At some point during that time period, did George go to Publix again?
Yes, I thought he was going to be walking to the convenience store, but apparently when he returned, he had gone across the street with my car and my debit card to buy another bottle of wine.
What was your understanding of where he was going?
To the convenience store, walking.
For what?
Cigarettes.
Just think for 1 second the level of control that this woman has exhibited, not said, but exhibited that she had over this man. I thought he was walking across the street to get cigarettes, but it turns out he took my car and debit card and got the bottle of wine. We saw the video evidence from Publix, the surveillance cameras of her and George getting the bottles of wine to begin with, and then him going back by himself. So we do know that part is true. There's evidence showing he went back by himself. I absolutely 100% 000 believe that he took her car and debit card and went there without her knowing and got another bottle of wine, and that she was wanting to wind the day down. She was wanting to do this. Probably what was happening is it was like, okay, we're done. She was probably like, well, I don't want to go back over to the store. Like, we need another bottle of wine. She'd already mentioned, like, I don't want to go back out. So we already know she didn't want to go back out. She was probably crocked and messy. She didn't want to go back out. So she sent him over there to get it. Right? And she's just lying about this. So I don't believe for one second that he did this behind her back. And again, we've seen the video evidence of her behavior. Imagine telling the person we've seen in the videos, no, Sarah, I'm not going to go get you another bottle of wine. Go to bed. Imagine what she would have done.
So he comes back with the other bottle of wine, and did he want you to drink with him?
It was expected, yes.
Yes. And you agreed to consume the second bottle with him?
Yes.
It was expected. Can't roll my eyes hard enough. Again, reverse it. Do you think that she would be okay if she just sat and drank and he went to bed? Now, again, I'm not trying to paint it out like one's better than whatever. I'm sure it took two to tango in this scenario, right? But she's pivoting herself on the stand to be a victim of the circumstance. Well, I wanted to have kept drinking, but it was expected that I drink with him. And again, I've talked about this in the live streams that we did with this. Imagine, think about, if you're a drinker, if you drank before, whatever. When you're drinking, you throw in like a bottle, well, it's the equivalent of 2 bottles of wine back. It's blurry at that point, right? You're just partying, right? I mean, somebody gets another bottle, you're going to throw another glass back. It's just, this is messy, is what I'm getting at. So for her to make it out like she reluctantly was drug into continuing to drink the Boone's Farm, I ain't buying it.
So over the course of that evening, drinking the wine, what did y'all do for time-wise? Watch a movie, music, just kind of tell the jury what you remember. I know it's obviously been a while, but...
It was kind of a regular thing where I would always try to come up with entertaining activities for George. And I bought a puzzle. We started off at one point doing a smaller puzzle, and then we did that very quickly. So then I purchased a larger puzzle, and I believe it was 1,000 pieces. So I thought, to get his mind off of things and to focus on something, it would be smart for us to do the puzzle. So for however long that took, we finished the puzzle. So that was one.
Did you every piece was finished, or was it?
Every piece was finished. It was strange that we couldn't find one piece, and we thought it was funny that it was in the perfect place on there. But yes, every one but one piece.
They did 1,000-piece puzzle in one sitting, drunk off a couple of jugs of wine, with time enough to do several other activities, watching movies, doing the timeline doesn't make sense. We know now that the closing arguments, the state was like, you don't have to believe her story of this. You don't have to believe it at all. She didn't even know the rules to hide and seek. It's my theory of this. This is one of the things that she did, that she made up to concoct her story. I think really what was going on was a long evening of drunken rage and bickering, and her nagging him and chasing him down in the house. They probably worked on this puzzle at some point. Maybe they did it a little bit, and that was like that'll buy me time. I'll say we did the whole puzzle. And she's trying to add that one piece was missing as like a little nugget. Like, we thought it was funny. Things were so great. No. Absolutely not. I do not believe that they did that whole puzzle in one sitting at all. I just think most of the evening was spent being messy drunk.
All right, after the puzzle, what did y'all do?
I decided to continue to maintain and focus him, and I have a bunch of paints that I used of my son's that his grandmother bought him. It's a very big art wooden box, and it's got pastels, pencils, paint, any kind of whatever. And he and I were very much into art, and with this resource, it got him very interested in being more creative.
I tried to maintain his focus. You know what she sounds like? Literally, like when the trainer that I work with for my dogs, it's literally what she sounds like, okay? The jury had to be picking up on this. And again, it's so normalized to Sarah, even years later, even stone cold sober, at least from alcohol, this way of thinking. I was trying to direct George, and we'll hear the state say, like, wow, he sounds like a lot of work, sounds like a toddler. You know, this is not normal at all, right? Also, she's saying this from like, she's sober right now, saying this and trying to be very, like, a specific vibe about it. Remember, this is playing out messy drunk. So she's going from thing to thing, and we've seen multiple angles of her messy drunk and what that looks like. So for her to be sitting here trying to play it off for her, I was like, George, we need to refocus you. We're done with the puzzle. We're gonna move along to finger painting now. Okay, honey? That's not how that went. That is not how that went, but that's how probably in her mind it did. Because again, I just think that her shtick was she got crocked, she beat up on him, like, you know, maybe not physically, but probably physically too, but, you know, emotionally, verbally berated him, and then pulled the camera out and used it as a weapon. Remember, he was on probation. So she had this power to get him arrested very easily and to cause a lot of drama in his life. So there's a lot of things that he kind of had to go along with. She had all this power. We've seen evidence where she had his birth certificate, she destroyed it. She went out and got all these things for him. So she, again, isolated this man and kind of took ownership over a lot of aspects of his life. He was beholden to her in many ways, and she knew that.
Doodling, you know, whatever. I would always tell him that everything that you make is a masterpiece. So just let loose and just let it go. And we would just paint and you know, paint and drink, yes, and listen to music sometimes, and yes.
Now, again, that dynamic where she's like, I told him that everything you make is a masterpiece. That's something that you say to a kid. I mean, I get, you know, you can say it to your spouse, whatever, but again, the way she's framing it here is like she's talking to a child. Okay, it's so bizarre to me. And again, the jury, well, clearly whatever the jury saw, at this point in time with the recording, I've not heard any word from the jury. I mean, it's the next day, right? So I have not heard anything from them, but I would think that these nuggets that she's letting slide out in conversation, that is just normalized to her, would be red flags to the jury.
Like, what are we gonna do now? Like, I very much would like to go to sleep.
Had y'all finished off the that bottle that he had bought?
I don't remember, to be honest with you.
Bless you.
Would it be fair to say that as the day wore on, the more y'all consumed?
Yes.
Now, you notice how she had to think about that for a second. And again, in the beginning, she's like, what are we going to do? Like, let's get a better. She is painting herself now, like, again, the victim of the circumstance. We'd run out of things to do. I had entertained him long enough. I didn't know what to do with this person. We've seen her wake him up at 1:30 in the morning while he's sleeping outside her door, and she berate him for doing so. We've seen her sit there on the back porch and berate him. We've seen her get him into a suitcase and berate him. She would have you think the opposite. And again, it makes me wonder at this point, did the attorneys previously see all this evidence of her on video and say, plead, you're gonna have to plead? There's no way, Sarah. There's no way, right? Makes you wonder if Owen saw all this evidence or whatever. And again, Owen has said where he came in and he thought he was gonna basically work out a plea deal. Not Sarah. Nope. She wanted to take it to trial, and well, you see how that worked out.
And would it be fair to say that as the day wore on, the more you consumed, the more effects you felt from the alcohol?
Of course, yes.
Both of you?
Yes.
Okay. So you would agree, would you not, that at the time y'all were trying to figure out something to do and you put your head down on the couch, that y'all, would it be fair to say that y'all were intoxicated?
Yes.
Again, notice how she gets a little bit annoyed. Of course, yes. The of course statement, to me, I don't like the way that comes off a lot of times, and it depends on how the person delivers it. The way she delivers it, I don't like, because it's more like there's an anger right beneath her surface, even now, stone cold several years later, that just is bubbling, waiting to come out. And I think that the alcohol, or any substance for that matter, but what we've seen, that the alcohol was like the key to that door of just come out and show yourself.
Tell the jury what happened.
At one point, I guess he knew that I couldn't come up with anything else, tapped me on my knee and said, "You're it." So from there, I ran up the stairs and hid into our shower, just waiting for him to find me so we could hopefully go to sleep soon at some point. And
Your shower, is it a tub or just a walk-in?
it's a tub, but it's in the master bedroom, and you have to go all the way upstairs, you have to go in the bedroom, and then you have to go into the bathroom part, and then there's the shower part.
So did you lay down in the tub?
At one point, yes, I was.
Okay. So you were hiding?
I was trying.
There's so many things. I mean, my brain's shutting down now. First of all, looking through the lens of the state of you don't have to believe this story, I don't think hide and seek happened at all. This was completely fabricated. Okay? It doesn't make sense. He tapped my leg, you're it. And so, without question, without saying anything, she runs upstairs, lays down in the bathtub, and is sitting there, like, waiting for him, like, annoyed, like, hopefully he'll come up here so we can go to sleep. It doesn't make sense. Now, that being said, he's hiding in the suitcase. So in the state will say in closing, she doesn't know the rules. Like, you don't both hide. And then, like, what's even up with that? I think she made it up. Maybe they did this at one point in time. She came up with the story somewhere, but I do not think that that took place at all. And somehow that was her most logical explanation for him being in the suitcase. Who knows what she did? Again, one thing that I thought of is because a lot of people said that they think he was packing to leave. What if she was like, okay, you want to leave? We'll get in the suitcase. Get in the suitcase. She pulled that phone out and he begrudgingly got in, and then, you know, after she maybe attacked him upstairs, something could have happened where she went upstairs, and maybe she went up there to be like, I'm going to go wait for you to come upstairs. And then, at one point she mentioned having adult activities basically. And that's what she was expecting. So what if she went up there like, that's what we're going to do now? And he's like, I don't want to go up. Oh God, I don't want to do that. So she's waiting up there and waiting and waiting and waiting. What if she comes downstairs and then it's like, and it all starts, or he comes up there and she's ticked off and she has the bat. Numerous things could have taken place, right? But the last thing that I think took place is the exact story that she just told.
And I looked over and I saw him settling himself in the suitcase.
All right, tell us about the suitcase. How long? Is it an older suitcase?
Yes.
Whose suitcase was it?
This is George's suitcase.
All right, and did he use it for traveling back and forth to Philly?
Yes. I had recently taken him on a trip to go see his children in Pennsylvania, who he hasn't seen in years. And we took that with us. And because of how dilapidated it was, how broken it was, in the end, after that trip, we decided that we would donate it.
Again, look at the information that she slides in to benefit herself and her self-image. I took him on a trip to see his kids who he hasn't seen in years. Look at what I did for him. Her whole narrative is what I did, what I did, what I did. In her world, the way she seems to present it is that she is the sunshine, the moon, the oceans, the mountains to this man, right? So she slides all this little bit of information in there. Now also notice, like, was that his suitcase? Yes. Did he use it to go back and forth to Philadelphia? Yes. So it does make you wonder. She had claimed, or if you've been following the case, or if not, then you'll know that this had been sitting there because they were going to go to donation. Things were going to go to donation. So it already had all these items and whatnot in it. So it just, again, makes you wonder, was this really sitting there because he was packing up to leave and she was done? Or maybe you don't know where the behavior would go with her. From what we've seen, she's so erratic. She could have been like, get the suitcase out. You're getting out of here. Start packing it up. Put yourself in there. There's no telling what direction that evening her mood took things, but we know the sinister level that it ended in.
Yes.
You've seen it. You saw it.
Yes.
It's a pretty big suitcase.
Yes.
How big is George?
George was my height. And
How tall are you?
I'm 5'3".
Okay. And how much did George weigh?
I thought it was 100 pounds.
Okay. And how much did you weigh?
I was 98 pounds.
All right. Do you agree you put on some weight?
Since I've been incarcerated, yes.
Now, again, we've seen from the videos of her interrogation and whatnot, she was much thinner than she is now. To me, now she looks healthy, like she's been eating and not drinking, like eating, she looks nourished, right? We've seen George, he looked very thin as well. And I imagine they probably just drank a lot instead of ate. So, but nonetheless, this attempt to make it out that's painted by the prosecutor, I'm sorry, by the defense in Sarah, which is he was this tiny little man. He could have practically been doing, jumping jacks and somersaults in the suitcase. Now, those are my words, not theirs. But you see where they're going with this narrative. And also notice her when she's like, he's 100 pounds and I think I was 98. She's going to, of course, want to always kind of one-up things to benefit her. Even if it's a couple of pounds, she's going to want to be less than him. She doesn't want to weigh more or be equal to. She wants to be lesser than, because that will equate to more sympathy, to more being like a victim, like he was the big man, even if it's by 2 pounds. Because honestly, when you look at some of the footage, like of him doing the baseball bat to the TV, he gets very winded, he gets very tired. I mean, he was very small and emaciated looking. So was she, though.
Yes.
All right. Tell us what happened.
I mean, I zipped him up. We thought it was funny, and we're joking about how he was, I guess, small enough to fit inside of the suitcase.
All right. So what happened then?
From there, it was just, we were laughing about it, and it was just strange that he was small enough to fit in there. And then I kind of moved it around a little bit with him in the suitcase still. It was still funny that he was still in the suitcase. Just, I think he and I were just kind of couldn't believe that he could fit in the suitcase.
I think she's completely lying about all of that. It's almost like she's reliving it and watching it and getting that little, whatever you call it, duper's delight or whatever. I think that she was probably berating him and making fun of him for being such a small man that he could fit in the suitcase. Is in my opinion, probably the type person she would be. Then she says, I kind of moved it around a little bit. Well, we know that she moved it around a little bit because there's evidence of this. She did it so that he couldn't get out of the suitcase at one point. Whether that was intentional or not, who knows, okay? But she's downplaying all of this. And in my opinion, she's watching it take place in her mind. She knows that's not how it went. It doesn't even make sense. Oh, we just thought it was funny that he could fit in it. And I moved around. We just kept, we just thought it was like really funny. That's like a fleeting thing to be like, oh, try and imagine the scene playing out. It doesn't even make sense. Why would you be sitting there doing that? Even on a drunken thing, none of it makes sense.
Did you eventually close the top?
Yes, the top was already closed. As he was settling himself in there, that's how I knew he was in there, was because the top was kind of flopping a little bit.
Okay. So he had gotten in there to hide, and he pulled the top.
Yes.
On top of it. But you could tell he was in there.
Yes.
You saw him right away.
Yes.
All right. So at some point, did you zip him up?
Yes.
And what was he saying or doing when you were zipping him up?
I just thought it was funny.
Were you both laughing?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, again, so she comes downstairs. She can tell he's in there. He's done the flap. She goes up and zips it up. And notice, again, how she's a little bit annoyed with the guy here. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. She doesn't like being asked those questions like, you zipped it up? Yes. We both thought it was funny. Really? Are you sure? Are we sure about that, Sarah? Because I can tell you that I'm sure she was laughing, right? Do we think he was laughing? I doubt it. Like, nobody would, like, that would be, especially around somebody as volatile as her, that would be very nerve-wracking. But again, she's just trying to continually play off this narrative of it was this mutual thing. But again, this also, when you look through the eyes of the jury, so she comes down, he's getting in there, he didn't zip it up. She did that. So she's the one who trapped him in there. And
so you zipped him up. Were y'all still laughing once you zipped him up?
Yes.
Okay. Tell the jury what happened then.
From there, I moved the suitcase around a couple of times, just kind of on the wheels, and moved it around. And at that point, it was funny. We were joking and laughing about it.
Notice how she downplays it. And again, just think of this. So she comes downstairs, he's getting in the thing, she zips it up, they're laughing. Oh, it's so funny how you can fit in here. She is moving the suitcase around. Remember, they're allegedly right at the same weight on the wheels and doing this and doing that. Do we really think it went that way? Do we really think she was that gentle about it? No. No, it was absolutely, I don't believe that for 1 second. I could see her flipping it around and kind of badgering him in the thing. You know, especially if imagine if she had just found out that he was talking to some woman. Whatever it was that set her off that night, because I think every day something set her off. She loved calling the police. This was so much fun to her. We've seen video evidence of it. This was like her pastime. And this was just another thing here. She was flipping him around in this suitcase, and for her, unfortunately, she recorded some of it.
Well, the suitcase had, from me moving it around, was flopped over. So while it was like that, I thought at that point I had a moment to, I guess, take the time to talk to him while I guess he was not able to get out for a moment.
So you flipped it. You got it on the top, right?
Yeah.
It gets in, but at some point you flip it over so the zipper is on the bottom.
Well, it was just kind of how I was moving it around, and it ended up kind of flopping. So,
But it was upside down.
yes.
Not intentional. She wanted to say not intentional so bad there. Think about the jury. Probably what you're sitting here thinking too. She's gone through this whole thing. I was moving it around and it just ended up that way. And then I thought, oh, well, while he's this way, I could take the chance to talk and tell him how I feel. Again, we've seen her version of doing this. It's not cute. It's not pretty. It's angry. It's scary. It's messy. It's drunk. Okay. So she has now pivoted him to be in the situation, and she is going to berate him, which is the video that we see. And again, she's saying, I could talk. That's not what we see in the video. We see someone doing these bizarre, that's my name, don't wear it out, F you. It's just drunken slurs, literally slurring.
So after you did that, what did you do?
That's when I went over and decided to videotape to just see the, I guess the jest in it, for him to understand that right now I feel safe and right now I have the ability to actually speak to you in a manner that normally I would not have the ability to do.
I'm talking, she is reaching. She was, I mean, she's right there. She's really coming up with this. It doesn't even make sense. Remember, she's trying to say that she experiences battered spouse syndrome, which several of the psychiatrists said that, yeah, sure, absolutely. But that doesn't have anything, that doesn't correlate with this moment, right? Someone that would be afraid that she's supposed to be in the degree that she is of George, this would be the last thing you would want to do, right? Can you imagine? Well, I wanted to show him that, you know, here in this moment I can talk to you this way. What are you talking about? It doesn't even make sense. You can see her trying to come up with a, well, what kind of an excuse do you have to conjure up that you would record this moment, and especially what you're recording is so incriminating? It looks so bad. And again, she's making it out like there was a logical conversation. Imagine if that video came on and she was like, George, I'm just documenting this. I know you're going to be angry at me, but I really want to say this, and right now I know I can say it without you hurting me. You know, I'm going to leave the suitcase open and I'm going to go check myself into the police station, whatever. I'm going to go get help after this. And not saying that makes it right, but it would be more like, okay, like maybe I can see where she was trying to go with that. But the video evidence that we saw was her just being drunk and berating this man who's begging to be let out because he can't breathe.
And you were intoxicated,
Yes.
and you would agree that you said some things you should not have.
Yes.
Right. But you realized he could not get out and get at you. Is that fair?
At that moment, yes.
So it goes on for about 10 minutes.
Yes.
You heard it here today, did you not?
Yes.
You heard his voice as he was speaking from the suitcase.
Yes.
That was his voice on the video and audio.
Yes.
And you heard your voice on the video and audio.
Yes.
That was your voice.
Yes.
All those things said by the man were said by George in that 2-minute video.
Correct.
All the words said by the female were said by you in that 2-minute video.
Correct.
I mean, there's just no getting around it. Again, with the demure, with the very mindful, very demure, way that she talks. Yes. 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 I think if she could be herself here, she would have berated Owens long ago. Long ago. These questions that he's doing that are basic questions that he has to kind of establish, I think annoy her. I don't think she likes to be questioned. I don't think she likes to be challenged. I don't think she likes to be anything other than in control, right? And we've seen that come through. You can already kind of tell, or at this point we can tell now what we know, what the other attorneys probably went through with her and what she probably put them through, right? This was probably an absolute nightmare of a person to work with. I mean, this is what they've said.
Were you intending on showing him the video the next day?
Yes.
At the time, or the next day, is it fair to say you don't even remember videotaping?
I do not.
So, from what you can tell from watching it, did that refresh your memory about that event?
It did.
Again, why would you show the video to him the next day? What would be the point of that? And if there was any kind of like cohesive thing to it, maybe, but even then I don't believe it. But the video she was going to allegedly show him is just her in a drunken rage, and again, I think this is what they went through on a daily basis. I think this was the cycle of Sarah's house that she ran. This was every day. You wake up, you just start whatever it is she says. If he went to work, he would go to work, he'd come home, and she probably was blitzed at that point, and they just had to go along with whatever took place. Wherever the roller coaster of Sarah was going is where they were. Now she admits, I didn't know about the video the next day. That's not good, right? And especially when there's evidence in the interrogation where she's just so confident that, look at my phone, and then she's kind of, blindsided that they find that video on there. It's another reason why it's just so shocking that she actually took this to trial.
I want you all to know that the majority of the time, am always afraid and always scared.
All right, well, I understand that. Yeah, I understand that. But would it be fair to say that you had some anger at that point?
I did.
Would it be fair to say that you wanted to tell him off to some degree?
I just wanted, yes, for him to have a better understanding, which was the whole point of the videos and documentation prior.
And you could tell that he was uncomfortable.
I'm guessing.
And did you want him to feel some uncomfort?
I did.
Okay.
Now, in this thing right here, I did. Well, the video she's saying, that's how you make me feel when you choke me. And this is what it feels like when you do this. I mean, she was getting back at him. It was like revenge, right? Something took place that evening, okay? Something bigger than other evenings that pushed her to this level of retaliation. I think every day and every night was probably some watered down version of like this with Sarah, like where's the drama today? Whether it was police were going to end up being called, whatever, but something this evening pushed her over. And the video where she was waking him up at 1:30 because he was sleeping in the doorway and basically she didn't want him there. She was talking about how bad he stunk and all this kind of stuff. And she's like, go away. And he starts going down the stairs and she keeps chasing him, like going after him and going after him. I think that's kind of what this was. I just think that's what she did. She badgered and badgered and badgered and pushed the needle and pushed the needle and pushed the needle until a breaking moment. Now, again, in this right here, it was like he was not capable because he was in the suitcase. The one video we watched where he like starts to grab the phone, she's like, I'm going to scream bloody murder. And it's like, but you you're telling him to go away, but you're following him and braiding him. You've woken him up, whether he's drunk or not. It's like it's 1:30 in the morning. You've woken him up because he's sleeping outside your door. Okay. I mean, come on. None of it makes sense. And again, it's almost, well, it's not almost, it's even creepier to see how calm and collected she is, recounting the narrative she's concocted and how easily she can lie and remain this calm and collected.
So between the 2-minute video and the 22-second video is an 11-minute period. Would you tell the jury what happened?
We continued to, I guess, speak to one another, and his tone changed, and I knew the tone, and we ended up, I guess, arguing back and forth with one another, and it was the things that he was saying very much frightened me, and cursing at me and threatening me. And
did he want you to let him out of the suitcase?
I'm sure so.
Okay, go ahead. Tell me.
And it got very heated very quickly, and he continued to push on the suitcase. And my fear was that he was going to break out of the suitcase, knowing that it was a broken suitcase. And his hand started to come through. His hand started to come through this way. And so I shook the suitcase, trying to get his hand to go back in, shaking it, and telling him that, please stop doing this. Please stop doing this to me. Please stop doing this to me.
So his hand actually got out of the suitcase?
Yes.
And you went to the suitcase?
Yes.
And shook it?
Yes.
Did that force his hand to go back in?
No.
So you're shaking it. Were you shaking it to try to get the suitcase, his hand back in?
Yes.
How long did you shake it?
I don't know.
But his hand was still out.
Yes.
Was he trying to get out?
Forcefully, yes.
Was he angry at you?
Yes.
I mean, yes. Forcefully, yes. 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 Key ingredient here. Stop doing this to me. Stop doing this to me. Well, 2 key ingredients to this clip. So that part where she's saying this, again, you put him in the suitcase. You closed it up. Now you're angry at him for getting angry to want to come out. Now, I think that's all a lie to begin with. You also have to believe that she just happened to not record the part that he's doing all this, because the only evidence we see is him, Sarah, babe, I can't breathe. We went from that to, I'm going to end you. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get out. He was trying to escape to breathe, Sarah. That's what was going on. And she didn't want him to. She wanted to punish him. Just like she said in the interrogation. I thought maybe give him 5 minutes in there. That's what was going on. She was teaching him a lesson. That's really what was going on. And she, I think, gets off on that power over him. I think it does something to her. She loves that power. You know, this is what the energy I get from her and all the video clips I see of him doing this stuff to him, whether it's that or waking him up or whatever. It's, she loves that power she has over that man.
Were you in fear?
Always.
If he would have gotten out of the suitcase, what would he have done to you?
Like he used to tell me, he probably would have made me unrecognizable, or I would have lost my life.
Did you lose the grip on the suitcase?
Yes.
Where was the bat in relation to the suitcase?
It was leaning up against the dining room table, right there.
How far was the bat from the suitcase?
3 feet, 2 feet.
Was his hand still out of the suitcase?
Yes.
And was he getting out of the suitcase?
He very much was trying, yes.
And so what did you do?
for the split second reaction that I had, I happened to see that and I grabbed the baseball bat and was trying to poke his hand to go back in to please don't break through, please. So I hit his hand.
Did you hit the outside part of his hand?
Yes.
We've seen the photographs of his left hand. Did you cause the bruising there?
I'm guessing yes.
I tried to poke to not come in. Don't do that. Don't come out. Please. Okay. Again, I'm going with the state and that those injuries took place outside of the suitcase. Okay. Secondly, in the beginning where he's like, what did you think would happen? And she's like, well, like he said before, notice how she has to throw that in there, that he would end me, that my face would be arranged, I would lose my life. Again, look at the two bookmarks of we're not seeing that energy. That all occurred during that time. Now, granted, I get she couldn't hold the phone and record. Well, I mean, whatever. She couldn't hold the phone and record him doing this while she has the baseball bat and doing all that, but of course she wouldn't want to record that. The phone was her weapon. You see these people like doing stuff where they go through life and they always have to have the phone out recording stuff, like weaponizing it against people. She's one of those, okay? That phone was her weapon for George, right? And she held that over his head and like, I've got this video, I've got this. You don't do this, I'll call your probation officer and send her this video. I'll call the police right now and do this. I'll scream bloody murder. That's how she operated.
I started with his hand, and his hand, he was still trying to get out. He was still trying to do that. So I started to push on the suitcase around it, hoping to have his hand retract and go back inside.
I started to push on the suitcase. That's how he got those bruises. No. Now, she could have also given him a few swings with the bat when he was in the suitcase, but I definitely am going with the state that she attacked him outside the suitcase. Before that, she probably gave him a couple of good whaps with it before he got in there. I don't think that she left the thing open at all. I think she came up, however she got him in there or whatever, she closed it up, flipped him around, threw him all over the place, probably grabbed the bat, hit him a few more times, and that was that.
Yes, finally he had subsided and retracted his hand.
So in your mind, did you prevent him from attacking you?
Absolutely. Split-second decision.
Notice how she keeps saying a split-second decision. She's learned enough to know that that's a key component of things that needs to be said. So she's saying that it was a split-second decision. Well, my split-second decision, so I had thwarted an attack. So that moment, of that, his hand coming out was the pivotal thing of like, I'm in danger, I'm this and that. She had thwarted this attack. Split second. So again, remember, she's not dumb. She's just got issues, right? So she knows what to say and how to say it. Now, obviously, we know now it didn't do her any good, right? Thank the Lord. But nonetheless, look at these key things that she'll go back to in the testimony. These are things that she has learned that you need to say for the type of defense that she wants to or wanted to attempt at.
Do you remember zipping it up some? Or what did you do in relation? Because he was upside down, was he not, at that point?
Yes.
At some point, you flipped him back up.
I did.
Tell how that happened.
He wasn't cursing. He wasn't threatening. His hand was inside foremost. There was no more of him trying to break through the suitcase. So I felt safe enough to turn it back over. It wasn't happening anymore.
Now, this part right here, this is why I wanted to go back through this. As she's being very careful with her words here, it wasn't happening anymore. Remember, she just said that she throttled the attack. I felt safe enough to flip it back over. Okay, then why didn't you let him out? Like, okay, with you, the attack was gone. Why not let him out if he can't breathe?
You went back to the video and the couch?
I did, yes.
And we saw the second video,
Yes.
the 22-second, and he's right side up again?
Yes.
And you hear him say, Sarah?
Yes.
Had you left enough room for him to get out? zipper to zipper.
Yes, that's how his hand was trying.
That suitcase has 2 zippers, doesn't it? And they meet at various places along the line?
Correct.
How much room, when you flipped it over, how much room was between zipper to zipper?
I don't know specifically. I mean, it was enough to where his hand was coming out.
After you had hit him with the bat, was he not trying to get out anymore?
No.
And again, listening to this another time, the absurdity of it is even greater. Because I'm just listening to this, I'm like, who in their right mind would even get up here and try and tell, like, number one, do this, right? It's the most bizarre way to kill somebody and to punish them. It's so weird. Now, for her to get up here and think she can honestly talk her way out of this, which clearly, thank the Lord, the jury saw through it, you know, with this dynamic of like, you know, well, his hand, because obviously we know she's trying to insinuate and get it. She left it. She thought he could get out. You know, his hand was coming through, this, that, and the other. You've just throttled this attack. You're going to go upstairs. You're going to fall asleep. You felt comfortable enough to do that, but you didn't mean to whatever. It doesn't make sense. And it makes less sense the more I listen to it.
Did you believe that he could breathe in there?
Yes.
Did you ever believe he could die in there?
No. At all.
Were you trying to kill him?
Never.
Did you want to kill him?
I did not.
I guess it's just all been a terrible accident, Sarah. Let her go home. Now, I will say this. I do not think this was premeditated in the way that Sheila is like, I'm going to kill him this way. I don't think of that at all. But I think that something was going to take place at some point, that a life was going to be lost, and this is how it came out. Notice more and more where she's just like, no. Again, it's that meek, I'm the victim, give me sympathy, give me attention energy that she puts out there.
Did you walk upstairs?
I did, yes.
Why didn't you let him out before you walked upstairs? Were you afraid?
Terrified is more of the word.
Terrified is more of the word. Look at, this is the part that gets me. She's getting up here and saying this, and she thought about it for a second. Terrified's more of the word. Look at the way she spoke to this man and all the video evidence we've seen in times where he was not in a suitcase, where he could have struck out at her. Why on earth would you sit here and speak to someone in a manner like that you were that terrified of, that you knew that they would take it to a level that they would take your life at some point? Then why in heavens would you ever do that? Why in heavens? Because again, all the other video evidence showed this was normal. She turns the videotape on and just berates this man and comes after him and comes after him and comes after him. Just the video alone of him on the floor in the 1:30 a.m. wake up video that she did, the way she was talking to him, imagine talking to someone that way that you know would escalate things to a point of taking your life. But yet you're going to be confident enough to do that. And again, it just blows my mind that she would get up here in the stand and speak with her full chest out like this, knowing that this video existed. She had every chance to go through all the evidence, right? She took it. I mean, who knows if she remembers all these videos, but nonetheless, it's like she knew it was there.
Sarah Boone, you said that when he was in the suitcase, he was threatening her, threatening you. Can you tell the jury what he was saying?
I don't know. Am I allowed to curse?
Yes.
But he was going to end me. And that's what made me ask him please to stop doing what he's doing to me. That he was going to, I'm guessing, try his best that night to probably take my life.
But what? The threat you heard was he's
going to
say
end me.
Excuse me?
End me.
End you?
Yes.
The way she's acting like she is uncomfortable with cussing in front of people. I mean, this, we've seen video. I mean, she has no problem dropping these words and whatnot. You know, effing and effing. It's absolutely absurd, right? And her whole thing, he's going to effing end me. And then, well, I thought that he was going to do his best to, you know, end it that evening. Again, I think she's completely making this up. I think she's absolutely making all of this up. I don't think any of that happened. Anything, she said that to him, right? And she was like, I'm going to effing end you tonight. You know, I'm going to effing end you tonight.
Miss Boone? So I think we left off. You had called your ex-husband?
Yes.
All right. After you called your ex-husband, what happened after that?
I ended up falling asleep.
Okay. Do you remember waking up the next morning?
Yes.
Did you sleep in?
Not intentionally.
Okay. But you didn't get up at 8 o'clock, did you?
No.
So here we start to get into the actual chain of events. You know, I called the ex-husband. Why did she call him? Now, Brian will say on the stand that, you know, this is something that she would do. He didn't really pay attention to it. Almost like, oh, she's drunk. Here we go again. Now, for all we know, at that moment, she could have already known that he was dead, right? But most likely she was just being drunk and starting her drama of, you know, whatever she does. Now, also the famous words, not intentionally, she makes sure to constantly say this. And I do believe that there was a component of this that was not intentional. You know, all jokes aside, I don't think that she was with it enough and swift enough to be like, ow, take him out in the suitcase. I just don't think that she's that intelligent, to be honest. You know, I don't think she's dumb, but I don't think she's that smart. You know what I'm saying? So, but again, these are another key components of, these are major keywords she knows she wants to say, not intentionally from the very beginning. Not intentional, split-second decision, afraid for my life, major buzzwords for her.
I figured that George was downstairs either drinking or looking for jobs, or may have just left. And so eventually I decided to get out of the bed and start moving to go downstairs. I was motivated enough to go downstairs. And when I went downstairs, it was very quiet. So I had the understanding, I believed that he had left. And
Did you check to see if he was, where would he be looking for a job at?
usually on the couch, he would have my son's laptop, and he and I, which we would share.
Y'all only have the son's laptop?
Correct.
And the TV was not working at this time?
The TV was not there.
Okay. So you thought he would be in the living room on the laptop?
Yes.
He was not there?
No.
Where else did you look for him?
I looked on the back porch. I went through the front door to see if my car was there, thinking maybe he had taken my car. I checked the bathroom, and when I was checking the bathroom, I saw the suitcase, and I remembered about the night prior, and I unzipped the suitcase
Let me
and...
stop you there.
Now, I think probably this is one of the elements that has some truth to it. Number one, the way she's talking about all these activities that she did and whatnot, I find odd for her, who wanted to be in control of every little thing that went on. So for her to kind of get up and haphazardly, he's either drinking or doing this or doing that. I think she strikes me as the type of person that would want to get up and be like, what is he doing? Let me start, you know, managing him, right? So this is where I think there's some truth and not some truth. I think it was very swift that she woke up and found the body. But I think that it was also what she's talking about, that she's trying to make it sound like it took longer. I think that it was more of like, I got up, I went down. Like, if she could speak freely, she would be like this. Well, I got up and I wanted to start managing George, so I went down to find him, but I couldn't. And I went here and went to the bathroom, and then I saw the suitcase and was like, oh my God. And I think that's what took place. I think she's buying time because she set up whatever she needed to clean up, whatever disaster took place. She probably cleaned the house, she made the bed, she did this, she did that, to cover up the drama that took place the night before, right? Once she realized he's dead, because she probably very quickly, we can tell in the 911 phone call, it was obvious he was dead, right? So she very quickly was like, well, let me basically clean the scene up. So I think that's where some of the truth is that yes, it was this slow, like, oh, I went to the bathroom and when I did, I passed a suitcase and then it hit me. Like that part's true, but the rest of it, I think she's fabricating. I think she's like condensing a bunch of things into one to make it seem like she's trying to gain time, basically.
You said you were in the bathroom when you saw the suitcase or coming out of the bathroom?
No, where our bathroom is, I would have to go to the bathroom here. And then when I turned around, I noticed the suitcase and I remembered.
How did you feel when you saw the suitcase?
I don't think I've ever experienced anything like that before.
Describe it for the jury.
I guess I was aghast, and I just can't describe the feeling. It was terror to a certain degree.
I'm sorry, say that again now.
It was terror to a certain degree.
I think it's interesting how she can't come up with a word to describe that feeling. And I think it's because she's not really capable of, like, she's making it up. Like, a regular person with regular emotions would be able to be like, oh my God, when I saw it and it all came back to me, I just, the color left me, right? Like, I just got chills. I remembered it. It was like a thud. I was panicked. I was frightened. I ran. I opened it. And then my heart sunk. Like, okay, like that reaction right there. But her, she's like trying to find the words. Almost like, what would a human say they felt like? Like, I've never experienced that. I was aghast, maybe terror, and you're just like, it's like she's not reliving it. I'm like, this should be the most horrible feeling you've ever experienced in your life. And so many words should be coming to your mind right now that are flooding your floodgates, even if you're just recalling them by memory. But this way that she's trying to construct, like, what would be this and what would be that? And again, remember, oftentimes we see people like her, they're mimicking people, right? They don't operate on the same level we do. I don't know if she's a narcissist. I don't know if she's a psychopath. I don't know what her issue is, right? We saw what the doctors say. They all seemed to agree she exhibits narcissistic, personality traits and things like that, but didn't diagnose her with it. But again, it's just, that's one of the parts with that, where if you've dealt with a narcissist, they deal with feelings very different and emotions than regular people do.
I just can't describe it in words, the feeling of remembering. And then he was still in there.
So what did you do?
I immediately unzipped the suitcase, and I was screaming, George, 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 and I was shaking him, and I pulled him out, and I stretched him out flat, and then I began instantly trying to do CPR, and then was trying to look for a pulse or a breath or just anything, and was just screaming his name over and over and over again, and come on, George, and I continued CPR, and I continued CPR, and he was gurgling, and...
What color was he?
What color was he?
Yes.
He was purple.
She's trying to sit there. He was purple. Also, weird question. What color was he? Who else, Sarah? No, what color were you, Sarah? That's probably because her frame of mind is always her. Oh, I was exasperated. I tried to do CPR, I tried to do this, he gurgled, he did this. If he gurgled then, why would she act so surprised when he allegedly gurgled on the phone with 911? Remember if you followed this and she called 911 and they were wanting her to do CPR and she acted reluctant? Because I think it was very clear he was dead, right? And she was like, oh, he gurgled or something like that. Why would she act like that. I think she was put on a show for 911. I don't think she did any of the CPR on the phone with 911. And I was actually kind of surprised they didn't bring people up like some kind of expert, but it would have been next. I mean, I can see why now. I'm going to answer my own question. But some type of expert to say, yeah, she probably wasn't doing CPR. It doesn't sound like she was, but I mean, who could ever really say, right?
At some point, did you call your ex-husband?
Yes, when he started to gurgle and I knew that my ex-husband is notorious for bringing my son over in very inopportune times when George is possibly drunk or doing things not appropriate for my son to see. And I just didn't know what to do. It was just a quick knee-jerk reaction.
Let's just look here. Look at how many people she's blamed for everything in that one sentence. My ex-husband is notorious for bringing my son over when George is drunk and whatnot. We've seen her behavior. Can you imagine what she acted like around her son? Can you imagine the behavior she exhibited around him and towards him, right? And she has the gall to get up here talking about why I don't want George's behavior around my son. Really? Again, this is what his family probably sees and is like, oh my God, this absolute monster. Okay, she thinks she has everybody fooled. And again, I'm surprised. I'm surprised at a lot of the stuff that the state did not bring out. Now, again, I'm not a lawyer, and so I don't know how that works. I can't say, right? What I mean by that is situations like, why didn't the state ask Brian some very specific questions about behaviors and whatnot? But that might have been hearsay and that wouldn't have mattered and they couldn't have used it. So I get that part, but it just seems like there would have been a lot more insight into Brian's testimony about his relationship with Sarah. But again, it might not have been able to be brought out in this by, legal parameters and whatnot.
Yes.
Did you call him back?
Yes, because he was taking so long. It felt seconds were hours. Yes. I'm still doing CPR at the same time in the process of it. I'm doing CPR I don't know how many times.
Did he get there?
Yes.
Did he walk in?
Yes.
Did he walk out?
Yes.
What did he tell you to do?
Call 911.
What did you do?
I called 911.
Is that the recording we've heard here in this trial?
Yes.
Now, she's talking about her ex, Brian, coming over and whatnot. Now, remember, he told her to call 911 numerous times. It took him telling her several times before she called them. And he would testify that she wanted to have a drink and a cigarette before she called them. You know what I'm saying? Like, before all this kicked off kind of a thing. So, I personally think she was annoyed on one level that George was dead. This was a thwart in her plans. This was going to upset everything. This was major. I don't think her first concern about this was that her boyfriend lost his life and that her boyfriend was dead. I don't think that was somewhere in the vicinity, but way down on the totem pole, just from what I've seen. Now, again, I don't know her. I'm not a therapist. I'm not any of those things, right? So I don't know this for sure, but it's just kind of the energy that I get and like the way when she sighs and talks about it and the way that she acts. And I was doing CPR, so I don't know how many times I did CPR. Really? Because you certainly didn't want to do it and you acted annoyed about it on the phone with 911. So I just think that's in general what it was. She came downstairs, she realized he was dead, and it was a cleanup thing at that point. Like, let's construct a scene. This is a pain in the butt. This was like George's last, I'm going to get you, Sarah, kind of thing.
Did you love George?
To this day.
Why did you love him?
George was very passionate. George was a very real person. George was nice to me on the good days. George complimented me. George and I were two bodies with one soul, he and I would always say. I don't believe that I've ever had a connection with anyone like I have with George.
Did you have that connection with your ex-husband?
I did not.
Was it even close?
No.
Two bodies, one soul. You can tell how she scrapes her mind looking for the right things. That's one of the things as I'm rewatching this that I'm getting, that I'm trying to constantly figure out with this, like what sits wrong with me about how she presents her information and how she speaks. And I think part of it is it feels like she's constantly raking things over to manufacture an answer. It doesn't feel like authentic answers. It doesn't feel like when somebody, why do you love George? Oh my gosh, let me think. I mean, we did so great. I mean, it started off wonderful. He was this, he was that, blah, 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 blah. She has to really think about it and then like be very specific and very careful. And we're two bodies and one soul, we always used to say, and it's just, it's very odd and manufactured.
George has some good traits, doesn't he?
Very much.
Did George have some bad traits?
He did.
Did you drink too much?
I did.
Did George drink too much?
Yes.
Tell the jury about George's drinking.
That was just killing her to sit there and say, I did. Sarah doesn't like to admit wrong. Now, in these moments where she is admitting wrong or wrongdoing, like, yeah, I drank too much, I did this, it's simply to save herself. It's simply to benefit herself. If doing this wouldn't benefit herself, then she wouldn't say it. Okay. Now, again, like going down this whole path of, did George have some bad traits? Yes. Of course she's going to have to bring this out and whatnot. And again, like the state said, no one's saying that he was a saint. We get it, right? That doesn't inform this thing that happened here, though. That's the part that Sarah can never get. She never got that. She didn't want to get that. And that's why she was so gung-ho on absolutely not. We're taking it to trial because people will see I'm the victim. George was the mean person. And probably in her mind, to some level, she really believes that to a certain thing of like, he was the bad person who basically thwarted her life, not in like a bad person, like I'm afraid for my life, but like he slowed her roll. I just think that that's how she viewed anyone who got in her way, if that makes sense.
If George was able to, he would drink from sun up to sundown. And me having my son and trying to work and maintain the home and just have a normal life as best as I could, somehow that upset George. And because I had a certain dollar amount from my divorce settlement, at one point it was from wine we could afford vodka, so a lot of the times he would take my card, my debit card, and go buy the large, we call them handles, of vodka, which is the big bottle. And sometimes he would finish that all off on his own throughout an entire period of a day into an evening. That's honestly where I thought that he was going to be that morning when I came downstairs, because he's notorious for just automatically already being outside from drinking all the time.
Now, Sarah, that little look she gives him, I think it's almost like, did you believe that? Because I think that what we've learned from the neighbors, she was right there next to him, okay? She might want to play it off like it was all George. She paints herself to be little Miss Susie Homemaker. You heard her, well, by me having my son and trying to work, and George was the one working. She got her little check from Brian. Brian was paying her way. Brian, the phone was in his name. Brian, whatever settlement, she got $1,000 a month. She mentions, I don't know if I took the clip out, but she'll say things like, and I don't know if it was her that said it or Brian, but essentially being like, Brian, you want hot water for your son, right? You're going to need to pay the bill. And almost like in turn, a level of like, well, George couldn't pay it, so Brian, do you want hot water for your son? You're gonna have to pay it. It's not an option to Sarah to do that. Now, she's painting the picture like she does that, but she tells on herself because she's not the type person who does this and keeps this up. We've seen the videos of her and whatnot. She's like, oh, well, George would go, we could afford vodka when it was good, when we had money, this and that. That's not a regular, that's a very alcoholic thing to say. And I'm not shaming that in some way, because if that's the situation going on with somebody, it is what it is, whatever. But when it ends in something like this and she's trying to pivot that to almost cast blame on the victim, right? When it's like, no, your language, the things that you're saying are telling on you. You know, you're painting this picture like you had to go along, like he was this raging, violent alcoholic, and she was forced to go along with it. And I just don't believe that. You know, her world might have been like, no, George, you can't just wake up and go outside and drink. You have to like put the laundry away first and then we can get drunk. And to her, that made her better than him because she would do stuff like that. But in the spectrum of things, like Brian was probably looking at it like, really? I mean, you can't even go pick your kid up, you know? But to her, because she did a little bit better than George maybe on some things, she was going to be better.
How did George's drinking adversely affect you?
It would debilitate my ability to help him the way that I was always trying to help him, because it would be one good day, a day of survival, and then it would be another day where I'm having to peel him off of me and call 911.
Why would he get that way? Tell us his pattern as it relates to drinking and then object.
Approach.
Now, in this, again, we've seen the evidence throughout the trial of she loves calling 911 and the cops. She was one of those people, one of those neighbors, one of the whatever, that this is what she did. Calls 911 left and right. I mean, we see then the 911 would show up and it was almost like sometimes like a not a joke, but like a, why are we here? You know, it was just some drama. Again, if you look at it through the lens of what she's describing of George really being her behavior, you know, I think her behavior was she got crocked. She couldn't handle it. And she went on these bizarre binges that would oftentimes end in calling the police because she had nothing going on. Right? So that was like her level of doing that. So well, on the good days it was this, and other days I was peeling him off of me and this and that, and okay, I don't believe that. I don't believe it at all.
Miss Boone, is that you?
Yes.
Are those injuries to your arm?
Yes.
Were they caused by Jorge Torres?
Yes.
And during the same incident, is this you?
Yes.
Is that an injury or bruise to your ribcage area
Yes.
and your arm?
Yes.
Now, these injuries and whatnot are very interesting because on one aspect I sit here and think, and it's like the more she would call the police and the more injuries she might have and the more documented this was, the more indebted to her he would be, the more enslaved to her he would be. Remember, he's on probation. She could easily get him arrested, things of this nature. So it would behoove her to have that level of power over him. And I think that was one of the dynamics, whether it was conscious or subconscious, on her part of constantly involving the police. Now, often, like with these injuries here, I would have to question some of them, did she cause to herself? Number two, were these injuries in him trying to defend himself off of her? You know? Now, again, I'm not trying to make it out like he was just had nothing, you know, absolutely Mr. Innocent, but he's not here to tell his story. You know, we can only surmise what really took place. And with her at this point, I would have to raise these questions over anything with her, like anything's possible.
So, George stabbed me in my leg. I almost bled to death.
George stabbed me in my leg. I almost bled to death. That's just her drama, right? Again, let me make this out as bad as I can possibly make it.
And then he started to pull on me and kept saying that, excuse me, that I just want to fuck you on the steak, fuck you on the potatoes. And I took offense to that, and I kept trying to encourage him to eat. I started to eat.
Was this just him really drunk and saying nonsense?
I don't know why he was so angry that day. I don't know if it's because I got steak. I don't know. Most of the time I don't know the reason why.
I want to F you on the potatoes. Now, here's the thing. If we look back over the text messages that she sent, the way that she describes him talking is the way we've seen documented evidence of her talking via text message, as well as in the video evidence. This bizarre stuff, I want to F you on the potatoes and this and that. And again, not trying to say that he didn't say that, right? Maybe he did. I don't know. But looking at her text messages in this, I'm like, this sounds like stuff she would say. It sounds like absolute stuff she would say. You know, I don't know if it was because of the, you know, he was mad because I got steak or this or that. Again, the documented stuff done by her shows that she would get mad over something like that, right?
Is this you at the hospital?
Yes.
Is this the stab wound to your leg?
Yes. Never.
Is this a close-up of the stab wound?
Yes.
And was that, did you hurt your foot?
No, due to the injury, I had other problems with the surgery.
Okay. But you eventually recovered?
Eventually, yes.
Do you have a scar to that effect?
I do.
Joe, can you step down and show the video?
Mr. J?
Okay.
You may. There's a lock, sir. Out.
All right, I don't know how best to do this, Judge, because we've got this ball.
They can probably see it from there.
Is this the injury here? Looks like there's an indentation.
You know, she was like, oh, baby, take a hold of my leg. Now, did you hear? They can probably see it from there. It's really, really bad scar. The way she just tries to, the more and more she's on the stand, the more and more she just takes onto this character she's playing of like, well, yes. Notice in the picture in the hospital, she's like, happy as can be, looks like, right? Just so excited to be there. But again, I think that she thrived off that attention. I just think that the human need to seek attention, to belong, to all these different things and whatnot will drive people to do some crazy stuff, especially somebody who might have some like narcissistic stuff going on, whatever. So with her, I just think that this was, again, par for the course. It was just, this is what we do today. This is, oh great, I got entries, attention, attention, attention. I can use this as currency over George. You know, the whole 9 yards. I can use it with it to, you know, for currency with his family, with Brian to get stuff. This is how people like her operate. Things like this are not events, they're currency.
911.
Okay. The police arrived on that incident?
Yes, they did.
Is this a fair and accurate depiction of the injury you sustained as a result of him kicking you?
Stomping, yes.
It was a stomp?
Stomp.
With his
All I
heel?
saw was his heel.
This is a, we ask that this be identification you be admitted today.
Okay. What was pre-marked as you will be received without objection is defense 8.
Was that the next day, or is that a few days later?
Now, this is one of the biggest things that I've seen people talk about with her injuries, and a lot of people didn't believe, like, you know, number one, did she give it to herself? Number two, is her makeup? Like, you know, what's up? So obviously I'm not a medical person. I can't say how bruises are and whatnot. What I do get out of this and all of her injuries and all of this is the pleasure that she seems to get out of it. There is a pleasure that she gets out of that. Almost like even that picture, there's a slight like she was happy about that. The way she's documenting this stuff, it's like she gets this enjoyment out of it. But I think that there's also a level of, because she's not really a true victim in this scenario, it's whatever she's feeding off of this, that's the pleasure she gets. So again, if it's like, oh, this is going to be good currency for me to use, you see where I'm going with that? That's how she plays it, and that's how she enjoys it, you know. And that's why when you sit here and start seeing all these, you know, oh, the knife, the this, the that, you know, this and the other. Why did you stay together? You were in control, meaning Sarah. She carried all the upper hand with this. She got something out of it, and I think it was because he was like her battering bag.
George wants me, which he has told me numerous times, that I am to be with him at all times and doesn't like to be apart from me or away from me. So whenever it was even just to go to the bathroom, sometimes he would go with me. And you have to understand, I have a 2-story, 900 square foot townhome, so there's not many places to go. So it just happened to be that it would be upstairs or downstairs, or I'd be in a particular room or not. So inevitably.
Did you want some time away?
Yes, I did.
Okay, now this part here, remember, or I say remember, if you watched it, she recorded herself berating him at 1:30 in the morning. He's on the floor. He was sleeping in the doorway. Maybe he did want to be around her. We don't know, right? But it's almost like she gets off on that power of rejecting him, of like, get away from me. I don't want you around me. Now, I think everybody can agree, if you're in a relationship or whatever the situation is, yes, we all like our alone time. Okay, I get that. So I'm not trying to discount that she's saying, hey, I wanted my alone time. If what she says is true, that he would want to even go to the bathroom with her, to be around her, that's intense, right? I get that. But she just strikes me as the type person that would pretend like it annoyed her, but she secretly liked it because she could then berate and abuse him over it.
All right, so these are some stills from video. This was George that particular day holding the bag.
Yes, telling me that I'm going to take the television out once he destroys it.
He wanted you to take the television out?
That, or I was going to help him, but either way I was taking it apart and removing it.
And what is this picture of?
The process of him destroying my television.
While you're videotaping?
Correct.
Is that the result?
No. After that, he ripped it off of the TV stand.
Did you later pass out?
Yep, like he usually does.
What's he drinking then?
I don't know. Vodka and something, I'm sure.
Now, the baseball video that we reviewed, I did a separate video on it, but these are the stills from it. I don't believe that was a rage thing. He didn't seem like he was in a rage. He could barely swing the bat. He, again, and a lot of people said this comment, and I agree with this. If you've seen the movie Office Space, where they do like this anger management thing where they take the copy machine out to the field and they all take turns with a baseball bat on it. That's what that felt like. And the way that Sarah does these little activities and stuff, and the way that she manages him like a little toddler, to me, I was almost like, this is giving like she wanted him to do this and she recorded it. And again, I wasn't in their house, I don't know. But unfortunately at this point, because she's lied so much, I have to immediately take the stance of filtering her behaviors, her testimony through the first filter of, is she lying? Why would she be lying? What's the motivation to lie and what could really be going on? And then go through there. Now, if she had not lied from the get-go of this in a different vibe, absolutely, like I would be looking at it like, well, why did he do this? Like maybe he was that drunk. And again, that could be a possibility. I don't know. I wasn't there, right? Only her and him were there. And that's the problem, is that only her and him were there and he's no longer alive. For someone that would be incredibly fearful of this man, she did not show any fear recording this at all. And again, it's almost like I just consider the phone and the record button a weapon of hers, specifically related to George. It was like her weapon. It was like she was keeping her thumb or her finger on the trigger, and if she pulled it, it was, I'm calling the probation officer, I'm calling the cops, I'm doing this, I'm threatening your freedom. I control your freedom.
This is my living room. This wall that we have over here with the heart, that's where we would display all of our artwork. We were in the process of taking it down to add more, so he could continue to be entertained. The bookshelf over here is my son's bookshelf with all of his toys and little guns and musical instruments. He's got his little karaoke machine down here, his guitar. The stand right here with the red bucket on it, that was the television stand. And then my back porch area and the dog bed here.
Okay. And it looks like in front of the bookshelf at the foot of the stairs is that a doggy?
It's a baby gate, but my dogs would wander upstairs sometimes and go to the bathroom sometimes when we couldn't get them out. So I would, at nighttime, or whenever we weren't home, make sure that they didn't go upstairs. And plus, Penny was blind.
That whole thing that she just said of, this is our little wall with artwork, and we're in the process of taking it down so that we could put more up there so that we could continue to entertain him. These are the things right here that I think she thinks, I'm trying to enter her mind right now, so work with me. I think in her world, she might think a part of it is like, the jury will hear me and side with me and be like, oh, poor little Sarah, she had to manage this man or else he would harm her. You see where I'm going with that? When in reality, like again, I call it the naked eye, the uninvolved listener, the cold ear, if you will. Someone telling me that, I'm like, huh? What? Like, so that he could, why are you together? You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a 3-year relation, 3.5, whatever, and you're talking like this. She enjoyed it. She got pleasure out of this, okay? Don't let her try and convince you otherwise. Well, obviously she's done it, right? She's convicted. She's going off to prison. Okay, so they saw through it. But it's the psychology, I guess, behind it that I would love to know how, like, what in her mind is she thinking that is she selling? How does she think this is actually working to facilitate her freedom?
Was, I believe, addicted to pornography, and a lot of that would be found on my phone from him supposedly wanting to call up job interviews. And as a solution, I sat him down and I explained to him, to me, that's you visualizing yourself with someone else, or at least having a pleasurable moment with someone else or watching other people. And to me, I told him that I considered that cheating on me.
Okay. And so he would download that on your phone?
Yes.
Why did you stay with him? You got to tell the jury.
As anyone who has ever been in love, or when you love someone, or primarily someone or something, you go above and beyond, and you tolerate and you endure and you persevere, and you try to make that person as spectacular as you possibly can, no matter the sacrifice that you may have to go through. To serve someone else in a positive light so they can be better people for themselves, and to just make them a happier person. And love is very strong, and love is very deep, and love, I believe, is not fully understood in a lot of ways for how different people react to it. And I very much, deeply, and passionately love George. I love him to this day.
did you?
Now, the whole thing about downloading corn, you know what I'm talking about? If he was doing that, brave man, okay? You know, because they shared the phone and whatnot, maybe he was. What came to my mind, which is like, I set him down and said that this and that and the other, whatever. In my first thought, I was just like, wow, she's even controlling like his thoughts and whatnot, right? Because can you imagine, like, he probably, if he was doing this and like wanted to look at this and maybe use it for, you know, private moments, if you will. I mean, look at what he was dealing with, right? Okay. Yeah, so she's even trying to control that. Now, I think evidence showed like there's some infidelities on each of their parts before. So it's like, okay, so it's okay for you, but not him. You know what I mean? Now, that whole discussion right there is specific to couples and whatnot as to what, you know, they're cool with and everything. So there's that, you know. But again, I would like to have known Georgia's statement when it got into the do you still love him? And she's talking about the sacrifices and the this, the that, and ba. And when you love someone, I literally was like, are these lyrics to a song? Okay. So when she's talking about all that stuff, I'm just like, yo, what sacrifices did George make to put up with your stuff? You know, like, what did he have to put up with? A lot, I imagine.
The day of the incident, the detective counsel gave me her business card with her personal cell phone number on it and said if I happened to remember anything or anything that I would like to add to the day for me to not hesitate to give her a call. So throughout the rest of the evening, something was off. I didn't feel comfortable with what she told me and how she told it to me.
How long were you at the scene?
Gosh, all day, from the moment that they were there to the moment that the coroner's van drove off.
All right,
Now, what Sarah's referring to is the infamous, you know, leading into the dramatic, infamous interrogation with the detective, the female detective, the male detective that we've seen in that viral video. We've also seen Detective Copesel get on the stand and provide testimony about that. Sarah will claim that the detective, they tricked her with the phone and this, that, and blah, 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 blah. Here's the thing, okay? At the end of the day, the police, when they know certain evidence, their job is to arrest. Now, I'm not trying to sit here. I'm not somebody who gives blanket statements to, they're cops, they can do no wrong, so there, it doesn't matter. Absolutely not, right? We've seen a gamut of things from dirty cops to not, you know, to professional police people, the whole nine yards. So I'm not someone who's going to sit here and say just because they're a cop, they can do no wrong, okay? We know that's not true, right? So a cop is not going to sit here, and she said it on the stand when questioned, the detective. We don't want to tell her that we're arresting her. Think of the implication. She could run. You don't know what people are capable of. What if she took Lucas for or you know what I mean? Like as a hostage, or you don't know where things can go. They want to disengage and disarm, okay? So does that mean that it's okay to do whatever? I mean, you know, maybe not. In the same note, they didn't do anything outlandish. She went down, and we're getting ready to get into the part about, you know, Sarah going to the police station and, oh, the phone's upstairs and this and that. They're trying to make everything as contained as possible. You know, they knew they were going to talk to her. They told her they were going to talk to her. You know, again, with Sarah, unfortunately, she lies so much. If she's telling the truth and the cops lying, well, unfortunately, Sarah's proven herself to be a liar. So who do you think people are going to believe? And in any normal circumstance, people are typically going to believe the cops first, which is why they have to be held to a high standard of like ethics and whatnot, and to really be vetted out. You know, because not all cops are honest, right? But in this particular situation, nothing struck me in a way that they were being dirty. It's like they found this evidence. It was really, really bad. You know, it's proved to get a conviction for second-degree murder. So they created a scenario to get her back to the station because they knew they were going to arrest her. And they wanted to get as much information, possibly a confession, as they could. This seemed to be standard protocol to me.
Sustained.
So you agreed to come, but you understood it was to get your phone?
Correct.
All right, you came that afternoon to the station?
I did.
And the original agreement was they were to come to you?
Correct.
All right. When you got to the station, what happened?
I thought I was just going to be picking up my phone. My car was there. I had everything in my car. It was just a regular, I'm just going to go in, maybe sign something and pick up my phone. And there's people that are over here at the windows, and I thought that I was supposed to go over there to get my phone. And Detective Lowen came down and said that my phone was upstairs. So if I would just follow him upstairs, that's where my phone was. And then I was taken into I guess it was an interrogation room, and they told me to sit down, and that then I guess the interview or interrogation began, and I just simply was getting my phone.
Sarah, tell the jury why.
Yes.
Now, again, you see, I just thought I was getting my phone. I just thought I was doing this. Now, again, to her, because she views life through the victim mentality, to her, this is like, oh, well, they did me wrong. Girl, we saw the video. You know what I mean? Like, and again, like the cop said, they're not going to say, hey, Sarah, we're going to arrest you. Could you go ahead and come on down to the station? How do you think that's going to go over? Can you imagine the liability that if they did that and she went out and did something crazy and took the lives of other people? I mean, imagine that.
You may proceed.
Miss Boone? Miss Boone? Tell the jury why you lied to the police.
I lied to the police. Basically everyone, because I was extremely fearful of being arrested. I made the first attempt of me calling 911 by telling them what happened, and I thought they were going to help me, but instead I was arrested for calling 911.
So she was afraid to say whatever. Now, here's the thing. She wants to have us think she's lying to the cops. Again, if you've watched the interrogation and whatnot, she's so quick on her feet in the interrogation. It doesn't come off as somebody who's lying to cover their tracks in the way that she's saying. I do think she's lying in the interrogation, but for different reasons, right? Not in the way of like, I didn't know I was justified, or oh, this or that. I think she's lying in the interrogation to, she knows what she did was wrong, okay? And so she's trying to get around that. Same as she's lying here, but it's different. She's not as like, you know, jazzed up, but she's lying here on the stand, again, to get out of trouble, but it's a different energy. What the kind of lying she's doing here is the kind of lying I would expect to see that she's talking about she did in the interrogation, if that was legitimate.
Tell the jury what you were thinking.
From the bat,
Yes.
I didn't want to die that night. I can't describe it to you. It's terrifying love to a certain degree, where my plan was to show him the next day, and just I wanted him to be better and treat me nicer and be the person that he was when I originally met him. And I knew that was in him still. I knew that it could be found, and I just couldn't figure out what it was that I was doing wrong in order for it to not be back to where that was. And I was tired of living in fear and just sick all the time of figuring out how I can entertain him so I don't die, and continue a relationship with my son and try to live a normal life. That wasn't a normal life for me. And just, bottom line is I didn't want to die.
Again, this person would have you believe that she was in fear of her life of dying all the time, and then they showed the videos that we've seen of her berating him constantly, right? It doesn't make any sense at all. But again, also one thing that sticks out to me from this specific clip is whenever they ask her about her feelings in relation to George, she's at a loss for words. And she'll always be like, it's nothing I've ever experienced before. I can't describe it. I can't do this. But once you start to ask her and get into it, or she'll pivot the conversation to her feelings about herself, and when you get into the I, then she's very quick. She can spit that out. I wanted to find this for him. I wanted him to be this way. I wanted him to treat me more nicely. But it's like, well, how did you feel seeing the dead body? It was, you know, like, you know, I mean, how do you say it? That kind of energy. And you're just like, there should be like 5 words you just came up with over that. Even if you hated the person and you stumbled upon a dead body, you'd be like, oh my God, I was in shock. Like, I thought it was a mannequin at first. I saw them and then I was like, oh my God, they're dead. You know, I panicked. See what I'm going with? She can't even come up with that. She can't even come up with that, right? Without like really manufacturing it. And that's what I mean when she's trying to say that she was lying to the detectives and that thing. This is the kind, this manufactured, slowly thinking of it. How do I want to word this line is what I would expect of somebody who's like, oh gosh, I don't want to get into trouble with what I did. So I didn't know what I did was justified. That's a different kind of line she's doing in the thing. That's the real Sarah, the angry, the irate, the let me come at you, let me be a Karen kind of energy lion.
I would have died, or I would have been disfigured or maimed, or if it weren't me with the bat, it would have been him if he were to have gotten out.
But who has all the injuries and who is alive, right? The injuries, and the state will say it at the end of the day, she doesn't have the injuries to support what she was saying happened that evening. George had the injuries. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at a few clips from the state getting up to question Sarah.
You may proceed.
So you testified earlier that you all had about half of one of these bottles left from the night before, correct?
Yes.
And so would you agree that this is one of the 3 bottles that was purchased between February 22nd and the 2 that were purchased on February 23rd of 2020?
I'm guessing
Okay.
it is like the bottle, yes.
All right. And it's 1.5 liters. Would you agree?
Yes.
And when you say half, were we talking about to the top of the label was left from the day before?
Oh goodness, no.
All right, a little less, halfway through the label?
It's too right about.
Okay, about halfway through the label. So in addition to halfway through the label, which you began consuming after going to public at about 12:15, correct? So you all would have began consuming around 12:30, is it fair to say, when you got back?
I can't tell exactly.
Okay.
So first reaction on one thing, when he was like saying the halfway thing, and she goes, oh goodness, no. And she's like, about here on it. And I'm like it makes the difference. Like she was acting like the thing that he said, oh, Mr. J, I just can't imagine drinking that much. It was actually that less full of it. That's more appropriate. You know, it's just ridiculous. You know, she was sitting there, she was like, she was in a little rabbit thing when he had that bottle out. I would have too. If I was her. I'd be like, give me that damn bottle, right? I ain't got nothing to lose at this point. We're taking one last drink here, okay? I mean, I get it. Come on now. So, but that's what I'm talking about, where people like Sarah, the personalities with that, they are very good at in every little thing pivoting it to make it sound better or look good. Oh goodness, no. You know, she knows exactly what she's doing. It doesn't matter. It's like you consume 2.5 bottles of that stuff. That's a huge amount of wine. Okay, that's why you hear her talking the way she does in the suitcase video. She's bum blitzed. Whether she wants to sit here and pretend like she was forced to drink all that or not is irrelevant.
That's what they say.
All right. So that's 3 liters of wine between 200 pounds split between 2 people over the course of a day, correct?
Yes.
And you testified today that you were intoxicated at the time that this occurred, the videos between 11 and 11:30 at night, correct?
Yes, at some level, yes.
Now, what does that mean to you? Previously, have you indicated that that means the room is spinning? Do you ever recall saying that?
I do.
So what was your level of intoxication at this point in time when the first video was filmed at 11:12 p.m.?
Do you mean from lack of sleep or alcohol?
From the alcohol.
What was my level?
What were you feeling? Did you have trouble with your balance?
I was more tired than anything.
Did you have trouble with your balance?
I don't believe so.
So you were able to flip a suitcase over with a 100-pound man in it, right?
I mean, yes, it happened.
Okay. How about your speech? Do you feel like your speech was slurred?
Clearly.
How about your inhibitions? Do you feel like you were doing things that you wouldn't do when you were sober?
I wasn't thinking about that.
Well, on reflection, do you feel like this is something you would have done when you were sober?
I didn't know me and George.
Imagine just from that right there, having an argument with that human being over something basic. She is doing anything she can. First of all, this feigned look of confusion. I don't remember. It happened. You know, it's like she mimics what a person would do. It's like she tries very hard to do what she thinks a person would do. Okay, and she's up here trying to act confused and like, what, and and this and that, and what are you talking about? And this is a very calculated person.
Your testimony was that after that first video was captured by your phone and you, Mr. Torres began getting angry and trying to push his way out, correct?
Say it one more time, please.
Between these two movies, of which there's about 9 minutes and 14 seconds, Mr. Torres begins to get angry and try and push his way out and get out of the suitcase, correct?
He had been angry on and off throughout the entire day.
Okay. You didn't tell us that earlier. You said it was a wonderful, fun day all day, correct?
That's because I lived.
Okay. But you did not tell us earlier today that he had been angry throughout the day.
When would I say that?
You described your entire day of doing puzzles and arts and crafts and outside by the dartboard, and you said it was a wonderful day and everything was fun until he was in the suitcase. Did you not testify to that earlier today?
I did.
Okay.
That's because I lived. Can't roll my damn eyes hard enough. I wish we could have had a camera on the jury when they were looking at this. But again, this is what I'm talking about. It out in free range Sarah, if this was not this, and someone was having this conversation with her, she'd be ripping him to shreds. Okay? The fact that he's going up against her and questioning her, but you said this earlier, well, that's because I lived. Okay, and when she does these little things, can you repeat that? Little microaggressions of control and also to buy time, right? We see people who do this oftentimes. And again, I mean, I'm not an expert, but this is just the vibe I get. It's buying these little moments to recalculate what they're going to say and whatnot. She's going up against a man that she's been fighting for 5 years here, right? This attorney. And he is dissecting this. And again, it's just like, well, but all of a sudden here you say he got angry. He was angry off and on all day, but I thought it was a good day. You know, we didn't talk about this earlier. And again, the interrogation, everything was wonderful. Everything was just peachy keen. You know, at the heart of this, she was abusing him in this moment, teaching him a lesson, just like she told the maintenance man, and things got out of control. She went upstairs and passed out. That's exactly what happened, and that was it. And he suffered at the hands of her drunken abuse leading up to that.
My specific question between these two movies is, this is when he begins to get angry and trying to push his way out and to get out of the suitcase, correct?
Angry again, yes.
Okay. And he was expressing his anger in what manner? How did he say this?
At which point throughout the day?
Ma'am, you know very well that I'm talking about between these movies. Please answer my question. Between these two movies, how did he express his anger with you?
Told me that I was going to die.
Okay. Now this is happening after he's already told you several times he cannot breathe in the suitcase, correct?
That part right there. At what point during the day? Again, the jury, they had to have seen this and been like, please. Look at how she's pivoting everything to make him worse. Changing the testimony. This is the real Sarah. This is a glimpse of her, because I think the real Sarah would be nasty about this. She's being as nice as she can towards the attorney, but she cannot take the criticism, the pushback. She cannot handle it. People like this cannot handle that, and it is their downfall, right? They want to be in such control and control all this, but this is like their kryptonite, okay? And so like when he said like, ma'am, you know very well what I'm talking about, she still can't let it go. She still has to pivot and slide information in. If this was somebody who truly went through this, they would not be, you wouldn't need to ham something up, because the story that you told would already be outrageous enough. And not outrageous in the way that this is, but like the evidence would support it. So you don't need to manufacture it, is what I'm getting at.
And he's been in there for whatever brief amount of time it took you to zip him up, and the laughter stops, and then you go over to begin to film, correct?
Yes.
And you're filming, your purpose of filming is to kind of teach him a lesson. This is your chance to say something to him when he can't say anything back to you, correct?
No,
Then correct me.
there was no lesson to be learned. It was just I wanted him to try to understand how I felt, so maybe he could progress in being a better person the next day.
This right here, her immediate response is to disagree with what he said. And then when he's like, well, correct me, almost like she wasn't expecting that. No, there was no lesson to be learned. And then she proceeds to say the lesson that she was trying to teach him. There's already evidence of saying she was trying to teach him a lesson. See what I'm saying? She immediately disagrees to disagree. You've met personalities like this, right? Where you could literally wear this blue shirt, although this could be purple. So just pretend whatever color it is that you think it is. It's blue in my world, but on the camera it looks purple. You could wear this in and be like, this is a purple shirt. And that person, no, it's red. What are you talking about? It's purple. I mean, maybe blue, but no, it's red. Because technically, to get purple, you have to combine, you see what I'm saying? And you're like, okay, I guess, but why are we arguing about that? It doesn't matter. That is Sarah, okay? And especially if you're fighting for your life, right? I mean, anybody would, okay? But it's just the way that it's like she would do this over something basic, okay, that is so inconsequential to the day.
What is your memory of what happens between 11:03 p.m. and 31 seconds when that image is captured, and then when the movie starts at 11:12:45? What do you remember?
I don't.
Okay. Do you remember anything from that night?
I do.
You told the police on February 25th, 2020, when they first showed you the video, that you didn't remember taking that. You remember that?
I do.
And your testimony is you do remember taking that video,
I do.
but you don't remember taking that photograph 9 minutes prior.
Correct.
Did you have more to drink in those 9 minutes?
I did not.
She's looking at him just as, again, she's keeping these blinders on, like, I'm just going to say this. You can't, there's nothing you can say. I don't remember. And again, the jury saw through this. They saw through the selective memory because it didn't happen. It's very obvious it didn't happen, okay? And the fact that they showed all this other kind of video that shows her as being the aggressor, this is just one more thing. We have not seen true evidence of George exhibiting some type of unprovoked, serious, violent nature towards her that would warrant her taking the man's life.
Now, you testified moments ago that your two neighbors must have misremembered which night the loud noise was, correct?
Yes.
And now you're telling us that you don't remember taking the photograph at 11:03 p.m., correct?
Correct.
Unfortunately for Sarah, timestamps and witness testimony is not her friend. If you recall, if you watch this, two of her neighbors, they were roommates, would testify that there was a huge loud thud. It shook the walls. It disturbed them. They heard it to the point of commenting like, what is that? What's going on? This was the night of the incident. Now, Sarah would testify now that, no, that was a different day. They misremembered that. However, she can't even get her story straight as to what she remembers and whatnot. Now, in the closing arguments, if you watch that, I did a video on it as well and specifically talked about that dynamic where he says, you know what, the neighbors say that there was a loud noise that night because there was a loud noise. Sarah's asking you to believe her that, oh no, they're wrong with their memory. It's just the coincidence of another being like that happening. Something that, nope, yep, that's what happened. It wasn't on the evening that most likely I struck George and he hit the wall and then fell down the stairs. No, that was something different.
Yes.
And between that time frame, you were the only person in your apartment plus Mr. Torres in the suitcase, correct?
Yes.
So if anything had been disturbed in your apartment, you had all the time that you wanted to undisturb them before calling 911, correct?
If I wanted to.
She said, when she said that, she's already remembering herself going and setting the puzzle up and stuff like that. If I wanted to. You know who she almost reminds me of, and you might have caught on to this with the voice that I'm doing, is Moira from Schitt's Creek. It's almost like that's who she's trying to talk about. Well, I don't know, David. Let's see. You just fold the cheese. That's literally what she reminds me of, the way she's trying to like sell this personality on the stand.
And your testimony is there was no loud boom that shook the walls of your townhouse at about 11 p.m. the night of February 23rd, 2020, correct?
Correct.
To the best of your memory, correct?
Correct.
That's correct, David. But this is what I'm talking about. So to her, she's asking you to go out on a limb, believe that you're to believe her memory over other people's. Now, the neighbors have all testified that basically she was the neighborhood drunk, right? Walking around barefoot, asking for money, asking for cigarettes, asking for the bathroom, asking for this, asking for that, passed out front. And again, it's not to sit here and say, I hate to sit here and characterize her or George as like, oh, they're the town drunks, whatever. Because obviously if that's the situation, there's like hurt, there's pain going on in that type of scenario with somebody else and whatnot. But with Sarah, it's the fact that she's victimized this man for so long, and probably other people. I mean, listen to Brian's story, and wants to pivot herself as this outstanding human being when the evidence and testimony from those who know her is completely opposite, and at the same time of pivoting herself as this, putting down the person who she killed.
Now, your testimony, it seems like you spend day after day finding things to entertain Mr. Torres to do, correct?
Yes.
Almost like having a child. You have your own child, correct?
I do.
What you described sounded like having a small child. Would you agree?
That's your interpretation.
Okay. Well, you take him from doing arts and crafts to doing puzzles, so on and so forth, correct?
When he's been drinking, yes.
Okay.
This is the real Sarah. Very quick, very snarky. That's your interpretation. When he's been drinking, yes. This level of conniving, which his family, George's family is who I mean, has said that that's what she is. You're getting a glimpse of the real Sarah here, right? Minus the beratingness and the drunkenness.
And Mr. Torres was notorious for doing some of these things, correct?
What do you mean?
Well, you described Mr. Torres as being notoriously known for doing things. You described your ex-husband, Brian Boone, notorious for doing things like nagging and calling all the time. You remember your testimony calling people notorious for doing things?
Yes.
What would you say people would say you're notorious for?
I don't know.
Well, I think we can come up with a few, Sarah. I love the way Mr. J, the state, number one, his level of petty with her. Number two, his level of snark with her. Number three, his like very flat, dry humor with her, right? But it's an honest question, and oftentimes with personalities like Sarah, and specifically Sarah, since that's who this is the defendant is, you see them, and again I just say this, telling themselves by projecting on others. Everyone around her is the issue. Everyone around her does everything wrong. Oh, Brian's notorious for bringing my son over when George is drunk. Oh, George is notorious for doing that. But again, they can't pivot that lens to themselves, number one, but I think that their way of doing that is by finding those faults in everyone around them, right? Because imagine, you already see what people around her say, right? Imagine people who can truly, imagine if George was here to go up in the stand and say what he really thought about Sarah. Imagine the things that man would say.
Okay. But you wouldn't return his call. You would let him call several times, correct?
That day, yes.
Okay. How about other days? Would he have to call to remind you to get Lucas on other days?
He wasn't reminding me. He was just making sure that Lucas was covered for a pickup or drop off.
Now, this part right here, he wasn't calling to remind me. He's already said that he had to do that because she wouldn't show up. And we've already seen enough to know it's yeah, she's probably drunk and forgets what day it is. She's not working. She's not doing anything. Their biggest thing is they get up and clean the house up a little bit and then they can get crocked all day long, according to her, right? So it's by 3 o'clock, she's probably way too gone to go pick her son up. So Brian has to call. And then he says, sometimes she'll just let me keep him. Imagine the disappointment Lucas has gone through, right? At this point, it doesn't mean his mother's gone for his lifetime, I say, but the chunk of his lifetime, right? And it might be better for him, which is an unfortunate thing, because obviously having both parents is major. But the pain that she probably has brought to him, I can't imagine. I can't imagine that kind of inconsistency that most likely took place in that scenario.
Did you not remember going to Publix with Mr. Torres that day?
At what point?
At any point.
No, I didn't.
No recollection of going to Publix with Mr. Torres that day, but she wants you to believe that the neighbors were incorrect about what noise that they heard. She wants you to believe that she remembers the convenient parts of the evening, but not the tricky parts. So she blackout walked to, or went, however they got there, drove to Publix. I feel like she was barefoot, but I could be wrong. Went through, got the wine, did all that. You see what I'm saying? So this is the part that it's interesting to look back through this now at this point and see with the jury coming back with, guilty, to see where I'm for someone who's had 5 years to concoct something, it was messy. It was good at parts. And when I say good, it had me nervous that she was going to walk or get a hung jury because of some of the injuries that were presented and some of the things the therapist said, only until the judge was here's the outline of the case and the parameters, the legal parameters. I was oh, she's done. But also, if you think about the statement I just said, oh, she had 5 years to concoct this and whatnot, therein lies the answer. She had 5 years to concoct this. This would be a different thing if someone had the same story to tell. And I cannot remember this lady's name. She served a long time in prison. And she basically was this battered spouse syndrome, where she killed this dude. And when you heard the parameters and the details of her case, which never wavered, they never changed, you knew without a doubt this man was going to kill this woman, period. He was going to kill her. It was who did it first. Did she take the upper hand in the moment she could take this man's life to save her own? Or will we wait around to see her being a headline? You see what I'm saying? You don't need to change the details when there's true concern. You don't need to concoct, as I said. It is what it is, right? It doesn't change. And so that's what with Sarah's thing, where she constantly pivots and shifts, and maybe this will stick and maybe that will stick. Now it's battered spouse, and now it's an accident, now it was another. See how I'm going with that?
And when they were asking you about Mr. Torres's injuries, you told them that you had nothing to do with it, correct?
Yes.
And that was not the truth.
Correct.
Now, again, this is the parts where she's having to admit to certain things. But remember, by admitting to, in somebody's world like hers, and this is just my opinion, whatever, by having to admit to a little lie that serves you, it's okay. Do you see what I'm saying? So by her being yes, I lied to them about this and his injuries, well, that's serving her. If it didn't, she wouldn't be doing it, okay? Period, end of story.
At one point, Mr. Torres called his brother Juan, correct?
Yes.
And do you admit that you were yelling in the background, telling Mr. Torres to tell his brother that he had been choking you?
I don't know if I was yelling. I know that he could hear me through the phone.
Now, this is the other thing, too, that you can tell through the evidence that we've seen of what she did with the family, George's family, I mean, whether it was pitting him against them to where they, you know, like the brother, there was some kind of altercation that she seems to be in the center of, seeing the way that she talked to his mother via text messages and whatnot. I mean, she was very, honestly, I'm going to say racist. You know, she said some horrible things to this woman, you know, and then went beyond being racist, okay? Like, she was just, whoa. Like, you don't, like, if you talk to your persons, your spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, family or parents in the way that Sarah did his, you certainly don't ever think that you're going to have a long-term relationship with this person, right? Like, you don't come back from the things that she said, okay? At all. Okay, like, done. And this is what I'm also talking about, where with Sarah, she has this way of speaking, and she does it in the text messages, she does it in the drunken videos that she does, where it's like these blurty, outy, drunken slurs through slurring and this and that and the other. Even with George, when you can tell it's like her and him talking, he's more coherent, right? He puts together more of like a thought process. Hers come out as these bizarre way of I don't even know how to say it, you know, but seeing how she pitted him against his family and created this trauma is all part of that isolation and separating him away to get him like sequestered into her own little world, and that's it.
Is it fair to say that there are just points in time where you don't remember what you do either, correct?
Are you talking about almost 5 years ago?
I'm talking about from drinking. Is it fair to say that you don't often remember things that you did while you were drinking?
I would not say often.
Okay.
I would not say often, just when it suits me. If I was her, my answer would have been this. I would have been like, yeah, often, yeah. Unfortunately, I would have looked at, pretend the jury's over here. I would have been like, unfortunately, yeah, when I drink, like even like literally like Listerine in the morning times when I do my teeth, immediate blackout. Immediate blackout. Oh yeah, it's awful, girl. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would have gone with that, but again, her need to be right. This is what I love seeing with like narcissists and people like that. If you're patient, because like they'll get their way, right? So oftentimes, it's just the way she's done for years with this case, but they'll always have their day at some point. And when they crumble, oh, they crumble because they do it to themselves. They do it to themselves. They have to be right. They have to get the last word. They have to have the upper hand. And they will get away with it for a long time, but it will always catch up with them. You just have to be patient.
Now, you indicated that Mr. Torres would use your phone to look at pornography.
Correct.
Were there ever any points in times when it was you that was used looking at pornography?
If I was, it was to go back and look to see.
He was trying to put her out there in front of that jury. He was like, was there ever points in time that you were looking at these images, you dirty, dirty birdie? Imagine if he started calling out like those crazy like titles and stuff like that. She would absolutely melt down. Well, at 8:03 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, you were looking up, you know, Shoulder Pads Gone Wild, Part 4, Spring Break Edition, you know, Facsimile Machine Edition. You know what I'm saying? Like some crazy stuff, right?
Did you ever threaten to get Mr. Torres arrested if he did not do what you wanted him to do?
I wouldn't say threaten.
Okay. Well, were there ever points and times where you would like him to call you or return a call, and if he didn't do that, you would threaten to get him arrested?
It depends on if he had my keys or something that I needed from him.
When she said, I wouldn't say threaten, literally, if she was off in the wild, she would have finished that by saying, it was more of a promise, right? Because that's probably what it was. Therein lies an absolute nucleus of this case and her control over him, right? And it's that part right there of her threatening to get him arrested. She held that power over him, and it makes you wonder like how she never did it with Brian, or if she did, because definitely she had George in that position where she controlled this man that way and got what she wanted.
All right, it's your testimony that you did not push him down the stairs, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, it was him that dragged you down the stairs the night before, correct?
Yes.
Now, by dragged, did you leave your feet?
Yes.
And did you get scrapes on your knees or anywhere from the carpet?
I'm not sure.
Did you get any injuries, like bruises or abrasions or scrapes?
I was missing a lot of my hair. Yes, that was on the stairwell.
Okay. And you agree that you were photographed on February 24th when the police came out, correct?
The day of the incident?
Well, the afternoon after the incident. We're not sure when he passed.
Yes.
Now, here's another prime example right here. Now, keep in mind that the things that were shown earlier, some of the severe injuries, these were not from this incident, right? These were past incidents. Now, notice what he said here. Did you leave your feet? Yes. Well, where's the injury? So imagine this. George, who weighs allegedly 2 more pounds than she does, right? Dragging her hard enough to have her on the ground and dragging her, and there's no injuries from that. Well, a wad of my hair was missing. Okay. But there was no injuries, there was no nothing, but yet these other times this happened. And again, I get abuse has many different faces, many different looks, many different outcomes. I'm not trying to say that's not the truth here. However, it seems that that's not the case here, right? I would think that in this situation, with the level of violence that she is alleging was escalated, you would think that there would be some level of major injuries being shown. It just wasn't the case. And again, I always say this and go back to this. The major injuries that were shown were on George. Now, also when he talked about pushing him down the stairs, all that type of stuff, remember in the closing arguments, he presents to the jury, you don't have to believe the hide and seek story. And he presents evidence to show it's more in line with the fact that she struck him with a bat outside, that George went down the stairs somehow, whether in the suitcase or not. Right? And it's my belief now that he probably went down the stairs outside of the suitcase. That some attack took place starting upstairs and moving downstairs.
Some of those photographs showed ashtrays inside your house. I thought you said you guys couldn't smoke inside your house.
We couldn't.
But you did. Right?
Sometimes, yes.
I love how he brings up that little thing, because she was so big on that. Well, we sit out back because we didn't smoke, and oh, we couldn't smoke in there, but sometimes we did, yes. Please. She probably, trust me, she probably had cigarettes coming and going. Coming and going.
And you agree you would go to the hospital and tell them things that were not true, correct?
Yes.
There were times where you would go to the hospital and leave without getting treatment, correct?
Yes.
And is it fair to say that you often had alcohol in your system when you were going to the hospital, correct?
Sometimes.
Now, one of the things that I think Sarah's trying to do here with this is, paint the picture of, well, this is how, battered spouse syndrome looks. You might go and not report incidents and things of this nature, which is true. And oftentimes we do see in these, abusive situations of, getting the person out and this, that, and the other, but in this particular scenario, especially with some of the evidence we saw of what it looks like when police arrive and whatnot, is a little bit different. It's more like a game being played, right? The police will call her out and be like, you're adding more information onto this, you're changing your story, you're doing this, but not in the way of like, I'm protecting my abuser, right? If anything, I've seen George do that by being like, I'll say that it was not, this is all my fault and this and that and that type thing, right? So much of the evidence is almost inverted to present and support him being the battered spouse. And you could argue they might both have been or whatever, since, the therapist did say there were signs of this and whatnot. But I could almost assure you that if George were here, they would probably paint him to be more of the victim long term, if you will, in this scenario than she.
So it ends in hide and seek after arts and puzzles, correct?
Yeah.
He says, tag, you're it, but you run and go upstairs and hide, right?
Yes.
So does that mean he's it and he's supposed to come find you?
No. That's
Okay.
just
So you both hide?
no.
Okay. How does this work?
Okay. I don't know how to tell you.
Okay.
I was it, and I went and hid.
I mean, my understanding of the rules of hide and seek is one person will be it, cover his or her eyes and count to like 20 and then go find the person that's hiding. Is that your familiarity with the rules too, or do you guys have house rules?
I understand how the
Okay.
hide and seek
So, explain to me, what was your expectation? You go up to the shower. Were you expecting him to come find you?
I was.
Okay. And after a while, he did not come find you.
Yes.
And that's when you returned downstairs.
Correct.
This is what I'm talking about with the snarkiness. I love this attorney, okay, the state attorney, right? I mean, in a normal way, okay? But the way he's like, because it doesn't make sense. It's just like, but you both went and hid. And it's like, so do you have house rules? You know, she's like, I know how hide and seek works. Okay, but again, that's the I have to be right, I have to come back at you comes from. You know, and it's like, it's in your best interest to say you don't know how it works, right? Because it doesn't make sense. And I personally think it doesn't make sense because it didn't happen. Okay, it doesn't make sense. Tag, you're it, we both go hide. I mean, what were you going to do hours later, figure this out? You know, number one, she already said they live in a 900 square foot townhome. I mean, how many places are you going to hide? Okay, that's what's so, it doesn't make sense because it didn't happen. Right? It didn't happen. Now, also the way he's like, so you did this after arts and crafts, and he really hones in on the absurdity of her story and the absurdity, if it is true, of the way she leads this man around like they're in a kindergarten activities class. You know, none of that makes sense. And the way she still sits up there and tries to sell this, no, with a confused look on her face, thinking that the jury's going to have this sympathy. I'm sure when the verdict came in, she was shocked. She couldn't believe that they didn't believe her.
Miss Boone, can you demonstrate for the jury where Mr. Torres' head was and how his body was positioned in the suitcase, if you don't mind?
His back was this way and his head was here.
All right, and then is it fair to say his feet are kind of down here, which would be the front left corner from their perspective in the jury box?
Yes.
And then his knees are kind of tucked up towards his face.
If I remember correctly, yes, that's the position.
Okay.
Now remember, this will come back to haunt her because in the closing arguments, he will say, well, where the back is, it's hard shell. So if you hit it with the baseball bat, and that's where he's like, you don't have to believe that she used the baseball bat on him in the suitcase. And it all makes perfect sense. Now you saw her standing there. You know, she wants to just spit nails at this man, right? It's all she can do. And the jury, and when I say that, I don't know the jury, right? We haven't heard from them yet as of this recording. Most people have a sixth sense, right? Whatever you want to call it, the vibes you get from people. The way we can look at this through the camera, to the screen, whatever, our phones, however you watched it, and pick up these nuances of her. Imagine standing 10 feet away and seeing up close, every little microaggression on her face, every movement, the energy that she's giving to the defense, to the prosecution. You pick up on these things, right? And that shines through. And I just have a feeling with Sarah, she's so unlikable through the screen. I can't imagine how unlikable she is in person.
All right. Can you help me understand how it was that you zipped it shut? Can you show us where you say you left an opening that his hand got out of?
Would it be easier to put it down here?
I didn't want to make you go down there. If you're happy doing that, I'll let you.
Now this is what I'm talking about. Any little thing, would it be easier to do it down here? Imagine dealing with her at home. Always disagreeing, always challenging, but God knows you can't do that to her. And you see him, I didn't want you to go down there, but plop. I thought what he's trying to say is like, you're wearing a skirt. I wasn't trying to put you out there like that, but do what you got to do, girl. Put that work in, girl. Whatever you think you got to do with the jury, you do what you got to do, boo.
Just demonstrate how she zipped it shut.
Okay, well, where's the paper foot? And do you remember what? Which one it was in?
I felt like I heard somewhere in the background somebody go, oh, Lord. And I don't know if it was the state who said, but I felt like I heard that. If you recall, if you've watched this, there was a paperclip in the handle, okay? And well, it's not there. It's in the evidence thing he's pulling out. Oh, well, Sarah They thought they ate with this. Okay, they were right. She was putting her Starbucks order in, right? She was on her way back to the grocery store to that bottom shelf. Okay, she was already on the way back to Publix. Okay, she was headed to that bottom shelf of Publix, right? As soon as that happened, she might as well have been gone. Okay, that she was like, we are done here.
Judge, the paperclip was on when this event occurred. When we pulled the suitcase out earlier, the paperclip was not attached. So now the prosecutor has attached the paperclip. We don't know if that's the way it was attached.
It's not even a paperclip.
And then Sarah's in there. Get out of here. I mean, it's just, I'm so sick of those two. I understand that Owens came in and he was representing her. He had to work with what he had to work with. I get it. And I'm appreciative of him for coming in and doing that, because this would be a nightmare if she had represented herself. And 100% she would have put his family members, his meaning George's, and continually victimized them and taken this opportunity to absolutely torture them. More than she already did in the way that she did by getting up there and dragging their son's name through the dirt. And just like we saw in one of the interviews with his family, where they're like, you know what, nobody's perfect, you know, but at the end of the day, George was not what she was presenting. He might have had his A, B, and C going on, but he was not what she is sitting here saying, you know. And that's the thing. I think she would have taken that opportunity, but nonetheless, we've survived this trial, or this miniature trial, I should say, or the short amount of time that Owens was on here. The amount of objecting and whatnot that he did, oh my gosh, it just was exhausting.
Your direction.
From what I remember, this is how the suitcase works. This was up here. This was not this hard either. This was like here.
Okay.
Right here.
Start right there, ma'am.
This part was gold, okay? So she found that after we go through all that, right, she's gonna unzip it. Can't unzip the damn thing. To the point that she has to say, this wasn't as hard as this. Girl, we already know the thing was broken. This just shows right there. That's all the jury needed to say. He wasn't getting out of that. And it's up to her to sit here and say that she left an opening for it. She put him in there and zipped it all the way shut, period. And he couldn't get out. You saw, she couldn't even open it on the outside. What, 3 damn people there? They can't even open it? Please. That poor man. Can you imagine? Can you imagine, number one, dying that way, but also, like, before, you drink all this wine and you get in that suitcase like that? What a horrible, horrible way to go.
Sure.
But I assume this one was much closer. It's not over there? Where do you
You asked me where I zipped it.
When you say that it was zipped shut, show us.
Are you talking about how I zipped it, or?
When you're done zipping
Like
it
the
shut and he's inside of it, where are the zipper components?
Just tell me what it's at.
I mean, it was the corner. I mean, it's the corner was
right
cut
here?
open. I mean, it's not.
Has to get everybody involved with it. That's how difficult that zipper is to manage. And she's sitting there. I mean, you could, but this is the little moments in these cases that we watch like this where I feel like the victim is able to speak from the other side, from the grave, whatever you want to say. And it's in these moments right here where she can't even get that damn zipper going herself on the outside, stone cold sober, right? Also here, notice how annoyed she is with him. And again, this is in court, sober, fighting for your life, okay, your freedom, whatever you want to call it. I'm looking at this, and again, I see it like this. I gotta imagine what she would be like at home drunk. And I'm sure that the jury saw this. I'm sure they saw a lot of the things, and clearly they saw something because they voted her guilty, right? Now, these are the clips that I had selected for this. This was probably one of my longest videos, like at one sitting that I've done. So I know it was a lot to get through. I mean, overall, again, I will always be mystified by people with personalities like Sarah. The fact that they think that they can talk their way out of these situations they get into. I think that Sarah was used to getting what she wanted, whether it be through coercion and power plays, such as with George and, taking his birth certificate, destroying it, doing this, doing that, hanging things over his head with the probation officer, or whether it be just being an awful human being at the checkout line until you get those expired coupons taken, right? Or your ex-husband Brian to just write you the check for the $1,000. Whatever the case is, she's used to that. So in her world, she probably didn't think anything twice about, please, this is a piece of cake. I didn't mean to fall asleep. And she probably didn't in that moment, right? I don't think she said, and now I'll go upstairs and fall asleep and let him suffer. I think she wanted to punish him, but I don't think that she was coherent enough and sober enough to understand the gravity or believe him, right? She was so caught up in punishing him. And I think that's at the heart of it. And she went upstairs and she passed out and he died at her hand. And she thought that she could get up here and manufacture a story and get out of it. I think that she beat him with that bat. I think that torture might be a word to use that evening, whether it was verbally torture, emotionally torture, or physically, or all three. And I think that she manipulated him to get into that suitcase, and then, like she did every single time she starts getting drunk, she used her best weapon, and that was the phone, and that was the video, and that was her words, and that was her threats. And I think that that's what she did. And she made him get in that suitcase like that. And he begged and begged and begged. She didn't know what she was doing. She probably turned it off and then did this and came back and beat him some more in the suitcase and whatnot. And then went upstairs and passed out. And then got up, very quickly realized, oh my God, he's dead. And it wasn't my poor boyfriend. It was, what do I do to get myself out of this? And she began manufacturing this ridiculous story that she has sat here and tried to sell us and drag his name through the mud over, right? Hide and seek and this and that. And no, I don't think they did any of that at this point. I think that it was a drunken brawl that lasted all night long with her antagonizing him, and it ended in George's death. So I wanted to go through the testimony because obviously, obvious reasons, right? So that's it. If you are still sitting here, please pat yourself on the back. I love you, right? I've asked a lot of you to hang out with me this long. Let me know what you think in the comment section. We'll probably do a live chat on the other channel to talk about like maybe this would be a good read the comment section video for obvious reasons, right? So we'll plan that up sometime soon. But that's it. I greatly appreciate you being here, following me with the trial and whatnot, and we'll continue to follow these other cases that we do here. So that's it. Let me know what you think in the comment section. If you could, please drop some little sofas off down there for myself, Rosco and Spirit, and Bo and Luke, who are at home being babysat. And until we all gather our little family up over here to come hang out in the comment section with the Sofa Squad family, we'll see y'all soon. I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now, don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. Also, if you're looking for merch, be sure to check out my Teespring store. I'll put that up here. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Rosco on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.